Chapter 380, Ice and Fire. 4. Yi Qingtang took a deep breath and swallowed a quenching flame pill. The quenching flame pill dissolved the moment it entered her mouth, with its bitterness mixed with a burning sensation traveling down from her throat to her abdomen. Instantly, a blazing-like burn spread throughout Yi Qingtang's abdomen. The boiling hot sensation in her body and the piercing cold on her skin formed a distinct contrast. Under the catalysis of the quenching flame pill, the spirit energy in Yi Qingtang's body began to surge continuously throughout her entire body and reached a peak. That surging spirit energy desperately wanted to escape the body in search of a place to be released, but the water that was mixed with large quantities of ice skin powder, which her body was submerged in, sealed that wild energy in her body with not a tiny bit being leaked out. To advance one realm in 10 days was absolutely not what an ordinary person could achieve and definitely impossible for even a rare genius of a century. To win the life and death ring 10 days later, she had to take another route. What she did today was an extreme method which stimulated her potential. She used the medicinal effect of the quenching flame pill to stimulate her spirit energy to a peak in a short span of time and then used the ice skin powder to seal all the spirit energy in the body. This type of cultivation method was only discovered 100 years later in her previous life, and obviously, no one was aware of it currently. As long as Yi Qingtang could withstand the torture of the two extremes of ice and fire, she could continue to be at her ultimate limit. Cultivating under this extreme condition could allow the improvement in her cultivation to be maximized. However, there was a drawback to this cultivation method. Forcefully sealing the surging spirit energy in her body would be an extremely great burden to the spirit root. If the spirit energy surged too much, the spirit root might even be damaged and ruined. Hence, in her previous life, although many knew of this method which could increase their skills rapidly, only a few dared to use it. However, Yi Qingtang knew a method which could avoid the spirit root from being ruined. Yi Qingtang slowly raised the floating pagoda that was held in her hand for a long time. She placed her hands together and positioned the floating pagoda in her palm. In the interlacing of ice and fire, she calmed her heart and catalyzed the floating pagoda, guiding its energy into her body bit by bit. These floating pagodas were obtained back in the treasure pavilion in Lin Town. All this while, she had always used the floating pagoda to nourish her spirit root. Floating pagodas were rather effective in nourishing the spirit root, and in this extreme cultivation method, it could protect the spirit root from suffering any damage. Yi Qingtang still had a few floating pagodas in her hands, which should be enough for 10 days of cultivation. With the floating pagoda's protection of the spirit root which isolated the damage from the quenching flame pill, Yi Qingtang calmed her heart and regulated her breathing, completely absorbed in her cultivation. In the torment of the extremities, she directed the spirit energy in her body to her 8 extraordinary meridians. With the flow of the spirit energy, Yi Qingtang could clearly feel that the spirit energy in her body was increasing sharply along with time. Delight filled her, but she did not dare to move around. In just an instant, she calmed down and continued cultivating. Because the spirit energy was always sealed in the body, the effect of the quenching flame pill did not disappear completely, and this extreme cultivation could be sustained. Yi Qingtang calculated the duration of the effect that each quenching flame pill could last, which was roughly at most 8 hours. She required at least 2 pills a day, which was why she bought 20 of them. Chapter 381, My Person. 1. A few days later, Ni Shang's injuries slowly healed, and Fei Ying finally heaved a sigh of relief. However, Yi Qingtang remained in her room in these few days and never stepped out. Apart from asking Fei Ying to leave a few buckets of hot water at her door every 2 days, she did not have any orders and even settled her meals in the room by herself. During this period of time, Ji Xianyuan heard that Yi Qingtang was about to enter the life and death ring and came a few times but was blocked by Fei Ying, who said that Yi Qingtang was not receiving any guests. Days passed, and the life and death ring matter circulated around the entire inner sect. The life and death ring was not the same as normal rings since they were really battling with their lives. Although there was such a rule in the inner sect, only a few dared to enter the life and death ring. In the past 3 years, Yi Qingtang was the only disciple who initiated a life and death ring challenge, and her opponents were as many as 4 people. As everyone was absorbed in discussions, it was as though Yi Qingtang disappeared from everyone's sight, and almost no one saw her in any martial arts hall. Could Yi Qingtang be scared already? If it were you, wouldn't you be scared? Do you dare to go through such suffering? I think it's still not too late for her to regret now. I heard that Song Juanxiu and the rest did not have any special reaction these few days. What reaction should they have? All 4 of them are more skilled than Yi Qingtang, and any one of them could play Yi Qingtang to death. Do they still need to train hard? Don't joke anymore. Seeing that there was only a day left to the life and death ring, everyone could not help but be curious about whether Yi Qingtang really dared to take on the challenge the next day. In the courtyard, moonlight scattered over the ground in the dark night. Ni Shang, whose face was still bruised, walked to Yi Qingtang's room with a tray of dishes in her hands and saw Fei Ying guarding outside the door. Fei Ying shook his head. Ni Shang could not help but be worried. Miss has already cultivated in seclusion for 10 days and never left her room. What should we do? I am all to blame. If not because of me, Miss would not need to enter whatever life and death ring with those 4 bastards. Guilt was written all over Ni Shang's face. In the eyes of inner sect disciples, attendant girls like them were no different from servants, and it was already lucky to not be mistreated or lambasted. No one had thought that the inner sect disciple they followed would stand up for them. After regaining consciousness, she heard from Fei Ying that Yi Qingtang was to enter the life and death ring. One could imagine how shocking Yi Qingtang's decision was to Ni Shang. I'm so useless. I can't do anything for Miss and can only worry. Ni Shang bit her lips. A thought suddenly struck her, and she turned to face Fei Ying. Fei Ying, if Miss doesn't enter the life and death ring tomorrow, do you think she would be safe? Fei Ying was slightly stunned. The life and death agreement is already signed. If Miss doesn't enter, she would probably be ridiculed by everyone in the future. Given Miss' character, she will not be able to bear it. Ni Shang pursed her lips, and a resolute expression flashed across her eyes. She suddenly handed the tray of dishes into Fei Ying's hands. Take care of Mississippi. With that, she prepared to leave. Ni Shang, what do you want to do? An ominous thought emerged in Fei Ying's heart, and he quickly pulled Ni Shang's wrist. Ni Shang took a deep breath and explained. I cannot let Miss be involved in this. This matter was started because of me. How could I stand around and not do anything? I will look for them. I know what they want. As long as I beg them, perhaps they will let Miss off. Chapter 382, My Person, 2, Fei Ying's eyes suddenly widened as he stared at Ni Shang in disbelief. You, Ni Shang laughed bitterly and broke free from Fei Ying's grip. Take good care of Miss for me. It is me who doesn't have this blessing. I've troubled Mississippi. Then, Ni Shang immediately headed out of the courtyard without turning back. Ni Shang. Fei Ying was alarmed. Ni Shang did not stop in her tracks at all. She walked to the entrance of the courtyard and pushed open the gate. Looking at the misty dark night, she knew that there was no return when she took this step. However, she did not regret. Fei Ying panicked and instinctively wanted to rush up and stop her. However, the tightly shut door behind him suddenly opened, and a figure shuffled out behind him. Just as Ni Shang was about to step out of the courtyard, a wet hand pulled her back into the courtyard hard, and a slender leg directly kicked the door shut. With a clear bang, the gate was closed once again. Ni Shang, who was dizzy by the sudden motion, was pressed on the gate with an arm. Where are you going? A rather raspy voice sounded in Ni Shang's ears. Ni Shang looked up in surprise and saw Yi Qingtang, who was wearing only a thin garment, trapped her at the gate with an arm. The faint moonlight cast on Yi Qingtang in the hazy night. Her damp hair hung loosely at the side of her face as drops of water fell from her hair ends. At that moment, her clear eyes were slightly narrowed as though her eyes were a galaxy, deep yet dreamy. Wuxia world. Sight the pair wondrous of eyes were fixed on the astonished Enai Shang. Me. Miss, Enai Shang's lips quivered as she looked at the stunning face near hers. Listen well. Yi Qingtang lowered her head a little. Her breaths brushed across the tip of Enai Shang's nose. Suddenly, she lifted Enai Shang's chin with her wet fingers and stared right into Enai Shang's eyes. You are my person. I will definitely not allow you to do anything that will harm yourself. Do you hear it? Enai Shang looked at Yi Qingtang, dazed. Yi Qingtang silently pulled apart from Enai Shang and turned to face Fei Ying, who had blanked out behind her. Watch Enai Shang properly. If she sneaks out tonight, I will strip you naked and put you on display outside the courtyard. Fei Ying suddenly returned to his senses. Looking at Yi Qingtang who was bathing in the moonlight and hearing her warning, he swallowed his saliva. Miss, you're as gentle as a spring wind to Enai Shang but so heartless like a storm to me. You cannot favor girls and not boys. Although these thoughts ran in his head, Fei Ying still ran over and pulled Enai Shang aside. Enai Shang returned to her senses and was about to say something, but Yi Qingtang covered Enai Shang's tiny mouth. If you're really worried, you and Fei Ying can just go to the ring tomorrow to watch. Enai Shang blinked. Confusion filled her eyes as she stared at Yi Qingtang, who exuded a devilish air. Miss, seems to be a little different from usual. Yi Qingtang gave Fei Ying a look, and he immediately dragged Enai Shang away, watching over her as per Yi Qingtang's orders. Under the moonlight, Yi Qingtang looked up slightly, and she lazily stretched her body when the moonlight fell on her face. Wuxia world. Sight, this cultivation method is really deadly. However, its effects were satisfying. Becoming more powerful was not to bully the weak but to protect the people around you. Yi Qingtang looked down at her palm, and the corners of her lips tugged into an evil smile. Song Juanxiu, the few of you can just clean your necks and wait for death tomorrow. Chapter 383, Come Up Together, 1, 10 days were over in the blink of an eye. That morning, many disciples crowded around the life and death ring. Song Juanxiu and the other 3 disciples arrived early in the morning. They stood beside the ring and chatted with other disciples. Senior brother Song, do you think Yi Qingtang really dares to come today? An onlooking disciple asked. Maybe not. Didn't you notice how she disappeared these past few days? She was nowhere to be seen even in the martial arts hall. She isn't even cultivating. What does she have to fight you all on the life and death ring with? Perhaps she has been working behind closed doors. Working behind closed doors. Ha! Who does she think she is? If her cultivation level could increase by kneeling in the room, then why do we still need to enter the sect? Might as well kneel at home. Isn't that better? This group of disciples did not conceal their dislike of Yi Qingtang, with their words covertly supporting Song Juanxiu. Song Juanxiu was related to an inner sect elder, and thus, there were naturally benefits to be on his good side. Yi Qingtang was merely a disciple who just entered the inner sect and came from Lin Town, which no one had heard about. How could she be compared to Song Juanxiu? There were 2 groups of people, one who flattered the powerful and trampled on the humble, and the other who watched the bustle. Song Juanxiu listened to the discussions, and although he did not utter a word, he stuck his chin out, revealing his arrogant attitude as always. Senior brother Song, if Yi Qingtang dares to come, just leave her to us. You don't have to take the trouble to attack her, said the other 3 disciples who were Song Junqia's partners in crime. In their eyes, it was simply impossible for Yi Qingtang to win any one of them with her skills. Although Yi Qingtang did challenge the 4 of them, realistically speaking, she would probably not be able to even win against the first opponent. Song Juanxiu did not say anything. His eyes scanned the crowd, but Yi Qingtang was nowhere to be seen. The life and death ring is about to start already. Why is Yi Qingtang still not here? Could she really be scared? If she's scared, wouldn't she become a laughingstock in the inner sect from today on? She was the one who initiated the life and death ring. She was so arrogant initially yet hiding in cowardice now. Does she still want her face? Face? Do you think she wants her face or her life? If she really entered the life and death ring, she would probably not be able to leave it alive. There was a clamor of discussions. Time passed, but Yi Qingtang was still nowhere to be seen. Then, everyone could not help but suspect if Yi Qingtang was really afraid and did not dare to meet for the challenge. Senior brother Song, do you want to send someone to take a look? One of the 3 disciples asked. Song Juanqiu waved a hand. Although he wanted to use this opportunity to kill Yi Qingtang on the life and death ring, if Yi Qingtang did not have the courage to enter the ring and admitted defeat, there was no way he could force Yi Qingtang into the ring according to the rules. It was all up to Yi Qingtang to decide whether to come or not. However, if she dared to stand up to them today, she would probably not be able to survive in the inner sect in the future. If the elders heard that Yi Qingtang broke the agreement, her future prospects would basically be gone. At that thought, Song Juanqiu could not help but sneer. The moment Yi Qingtang issued the challenge, she was destined to not have any way out. As Song Juanqiu guessed that Yi Qingtang would not appear today, there was suddenly a bustle in the crowd. 3 people walked into everyone's sight, and the person in the lead was Yi Qingtang, whom everyone had been waiting for a long time. Chapter 384, Come Up Together, 2, Yi Qingtang, you really dared to come. When Song Juanqiu caught sight of Yi Qingtang, his lips tugged into a sneer, and a cold glint flashed across his eyes. Since she was courting death, naturally, he was not going to be polite. Yi Qingtang's arrival instantly attracted everyone's attention. Yi Qingtang really dared to come for the challenge? Does she not want her life anymore? This junior sister is really bold. Under everyone's eyes, Yi Qingtang walked to stand in front of the 4 people with Ni Shang and Fei Ying following behind her. When Ni Shang's eyes landed on the 4 of them, a suppressed hatred emerged in her eyes. Junior sister Yi, you made us wait for quite some time, said Song Juanqiu with a smile, though his raised brows and laughing eyes were proof of the smugness and sarcasm he felt at that very moment. Sorry for making you all wait for a long time. Yi Qingtang smiled. It is about time. Do you still want to enter the life and death ring, junior sister Yi? Song Juanqiu narrowed his eyes and spoke in a louder voice. Of course. Yi Qingtang smiled faintly. Ni Shang tugged the hem of Yi Qingtang's clothes worriedly, and Yi Qingtang slowly turned around. Pinching Ni Shang's soft cheeks, she said softly, take a good look later. Ni Shang nodded nervously and finally released her grip. After pacifying Ni Shang, Yi Qingtang took a leap and was the first to enter the life and death ring. Which of us do you wish to challenge first? Song Juanqiu asked. Her cold eyes glimpsed across the 4 people. Suddenly, her lips curled up, and she pointed in the direction of the 4 of them. There's no need for sequence. You all can come up together. Everyone present was taken aback immediately. What was Yi Qingtang saying? She actually wanted to go against 4 people by herself at once? Was she insane? Yi Qingtang's words stunned everyone. They had seen people who did not want their lives anymore, but not one who was so hurried to court death. All 4 of them were at a higher level than she was, and she was probably not their opponent even in a 1-to-1 match, much less 1-to-4. She must really be tired of living. Song Juanqiu, similarly, had a surprised expression, but he returned to normal very quickly. You wish to challenge the 4 of us at the same time? Yes. Yi Qingtang replied without hesitation. Looking at Yi Qingtang's behavior, a sarcastic look flashed across Song Juanqiu's eyes. He exchanged a look with the other 3 people and announced. Since it is junior sister Yes' request, we can only fulfill it. Then, the 4 of them entered the ring. Watching the 5 people on the life and death ring, the onlooking disciples were instantly excited. They originally thought that it was a match of which Yi Qingtang overestimated her abilities, but they did not expect it to actually develop to such a crazy state. Not mentioning anything else, just Yi Qingtang's request to challenge 4 people by herself at once caused many to gasp. Do you want to bet? How long can Yi Qingtang last on the ring? Some disciples joked around. At most 1/5 the time that an incense stick takes to burn. 1/5? You really think highly of her. If it was 1-to-1, perhaps she would be able to last that long, but now, she is dealing with all 4 of them. Let's not talk about the other 3 for now, but Song Juanxiu himself is famous for his underhand attacks. Previously, I've already heard that Song Juanxiu once caused trouble for Yi Qingtang, but she landed him into trouble instead, and he was almost boxed by Feng Moli. With this chance, do you think Song Juanxiu would let Yi Qingtang off so easily? Chapter 385, Come Up Together, 3, There's Such an Incident. Of course. If I were to say, Yi Qingtang would probably just die without being able to make a second move. There was an eruption of messy discussions. Beside the ring, Fei Ying and Ni Shang's palms were sweaty from the nervousness. Everything they heard was unfavorable to Yi Qingtang, and while Yi Qingtang was set on entering the ring, they felt their hearts suspending in the air at that moment. Dear Lord, I'm begging you. Please bless and protect Mississippi. Ni Shang clasped her hands near her lips and softly prayed to the heavens. On the other hand, Fei Ying narrowed his eyes and glared at Song Juanxiu and the other 3 on the ring. He clenched his fists quietly with an unusually baleful expression in his eyes. If Miss was really defeated, he would definitely make the 4 of them pay with their blood. On the ring, Song Juanxiu and the other 3 wore a casual expression as they scanned Yi Qingtang quietly. Senior brother Song, although Yi Qingtang overestimated her abilities, her looks are really likable. It would really be a pity for her to die on the ring. A disciple, who harbored evil designs on Ni Shang previously, had an evil thought after seeing Yi Qingtang's stunning face. Even if it's a pity, it can only be a pity. I don't wish to see her stepping out of the ring alive today, Song Juanxiu said coldly. Yi Qingtang damaged his reputation 2 consecutive times, and if he did not teach her a lesson, how was he to domineer the inner sect in the future? With Song Junqius' words, the 3 disciples naturally knew how to act. Song Juanxiu looked up and straight at Yi Qingtang with a wicked gaze. Junior sister Yi, you're so courageous today, and we will naturally not be wet blankets. On the life and death ring, it is up to fate whether one lives or dies. Take care, junior sister Yi. He quietly shot the 3 people a look, and they understood his meaning immediately. The 4 people separated out and trapped Yi Qingtang in the center of the ring from 4 corners. There was a person at all 4 corners, trapping Yi Qingtang, who was positioned in the center. Once the battle started, one could imagine how dangerous it would be when the 4 people attacked together. Song Juanxiu indeed does not intend to go easy. I think Yi Qingtang really will die here this time. Song Juanxiu even brought the glacial frost sword today. He did not intend to let Yi Qingtang off from the start. A disciple's sharp eyes noticed the sword hung on Song Junqius' waist. Glacial frost sword. Song Juanxiu brought this glacial frost sword from his family clan. It is said that the sword is very expensive, and if placed in the Xianming Pavilion, it would require 60 to 70,000 Xianming points to exchange for it. I heard that the glacial frost sword is not only extremely sharp but was also made using frozen iron and thus very sturdy. As long as you're injured by the glacial frost sword, the wound would be infected with ice poison immediately. Yi Qingtang is really dead this time. Song Juanxiu had a prestigious background where his family clan possessed a strong influence. The glacial frost sword in his hands was famous as well. Although it was not a top-grade divine weapon, it was still very powerful. With the ice poison attribute, its name was recorded in the weapons register. Song Juanxiu drew out his glacial frost sword immediately, and cold air was emitted from the blade. He glanced at Yi Qingtang's sword with a belittling expression. That sheath was old and simple without any color. After taking a look, Song Juanxiu raised a brow scornfully. Junior sister Yi, draw your sword out. Chapter 386, Merely Like This. 1. Yi Qingtang's eyes were narrowed as an evil smile played on her lips. She glanced at the four people and clasped on the handle of the sword quietly with her right hand but did not draw it out. Song Juanxiu saw that Yi Qingtang did not draw her sword out and smiled. I've heard that junior sister Yi achieved a victory in the inner sect assessment just by the motion of drawing out a sword. It seems I can personally witness it today. The motion of drawing a sword required extreme speed and using all of one's strength in the instant when the sword was unsheathed. The very essence laid in the moment the sword left its sheath. That day, Yi Qingtang broke Ji Xianyuan's defense with this move. However, there was a look of sarcasm in Song Junqius' eyes. The sword in his hand was not an ordinary sword. Frozen iron was extremely strong, and ordinary weapons would definitely not be able to break it. Even if Yi Qingtang really knew how to use the motion of drawing a sword, there was no way it could break his glacial frost sword. Then, the four people exchanged a look and attacked almost at the same time. For sharp swords aimed straight at Yi Qingtang, who was right in the center. But when the four of them struck, Yi Qingtang did not react in the way one would usually do and instead closed her eyes and lowered her head slightly. What is she doing? The disciples below the ring were shocked to see Yi Qingtang's actions. In face of four people striking at the same time, she did not hide or avoid and even displayed such composed posture. Wasn't she heading for doom? Ni Shang and Fei Ying were astounded as well. Seeing that the four swords were already right above Yi Qingtang's head, their hearts raced furiously. Miss! Be careful! As Ni Shang cried in horror, Yi Qingtang suddenly opened her eyes. Her tiny frame moved slightly, and it was as though she turned into a stagger of countless shadows. A glint flashed across her waist and became a whirlwind that swept all four sides. Immediately, clanks rang in the air. Song Juanxiu and the other three disciples could not see Yi Qingtang's movement at all and could only feel pain in the palm where they held the sword. They instinctively withdrew backward. A clattering of swords sounded subsequently. What appeared before their eyes was 3 broken swords laid on the wide ring. What happened? The other 3 disciples were slightly startled, and it was only then they realized that their swords had actually broken. The tip of the swords fell near Yi Qingtang's legs. How could this be? Although their swords were not as impressive as the glacial frost sword in Song Junqius' hand, each one of them was priced above 10,000 Xianming points. They were clearly hard-earned swords, yet how could they actually be broken just like that? In the center of the ring, an insolent and evil smile appeared on Yi Qingtang's exquisite face. She lifted her chin up and glanced at the broken swords in the 3 disciples' hands and then at the broken blades near her leg. Senior brothers, your swords don't seem to be so good. The 3 disciples' faces darkened, and they wanted to go forward instinctively, but this movement caused them to realize the piercing pain in their palm. They looked down at their palms and realized there was already a deep cut in their perlicue where their swords were held against. Gushes of blood dripped along the handle of the sword and onto the ground. How could it be? Chapter 387, Merely Like This. 2. Shock filled their faces. Earlier on, they did not even manage to see how Yi Qingtang struck, and although they heard from Song Juanxiu that Yi Qingtang knew the profound skill of the motion of drawing a sword, they were not too bothered with it. After all, their skills overpowered Yi Qingtang's, and even if she used that move, it would definitely not be able to block one move from them. But the 3 people were a little dumbfounded by everything that happened. 4 people attacked, and 3 swords were broken. Only Song Junqius' glacial frost sword did not have any traces of breaking. However, Song Junqius' expression was frighteningly dark at that moment. The blood that flowed out of his perlicue gradually stained the sword handle red, and there was actually a 1-finger-wide dent on the blade of the glacial frost sword that he took pride in. The glacial frost sword is damaged. How is this possible? The surrounding disciples below the ring took in the scene with their mouths hung ajar. Yi Qingtang actually used one move to break 3 weapons and damaged the glacial frost sword. How bizarre was that? Everyone's eyes landed on the unattractive sword in Yi Qingtang's hands. At that moment, the disciples realized that the ordinary-looking blade seemed to hold many stars which twinkled brightly under the scorching sun. What is the sword in Yi Qingtang's hand? How could it actually damage the glacial frost sword? I've never seen it before. Song Juanxiu narrowed his eyes. He initially thought that Yi Qingtang would die from this combined attack of 4 people, yet unexpectedly, he embarrassed himself instead. Clutching onto the handle of the glacial frost sword, he looked at Yi Qingtang's sword and spoke coldly. Junior sister Yes' sword seems to have some background. I wonder what sword it is. Yi Qingtang's lips curled into a seeming smile. Demonic blood sword. Demonic blood sword. Song Juanxiu frowned slightly. He had heard of the demonic blood sword before. It was a pretty good sword that was extremely sharp, and it emitted a demonic air. However, in terms of strength, it was completely incomparable to the glacial frost sword. If the 2 swords clashed head-on, the broken sword would definitely be the demonic blood sword. However, currently, his glacial frost sword was the one that was chipped off. Song Juanxiu felt that there was something odd about Yi Qingtang's demonic blood sword. They underestimated her previously and did not expect Yi Qingtang to have such a good sword. However, they would not give Yi Qingtang a chance again. Your sword is pretty good, but, to win the ring, you can't rely solely on a good sword, Song Juanxiu said coldly. He exchanged a look with the other 3 people and immediately charged towards Yi Qingtang with a sword. This time, only Song Juanxiu attacked while the other 3 stood aside without moving. A scoff flashed across Yi Qingtang's eyes, and her sneer deepened as Song Juanxiu came nearer. In just a moment, Song Juanxiu and Yi Qingtang were in a tussle, and their combined breaths were like a whirlwind that caused turbulence the surrounding air. Song Juanxiu was currently stage 3 of the first heaven. His attacks were violent, and he had frightening strength. He knew that there was something strange about Yi Qingtang's demonic blood sword and thus simply did not intend to fight with her using swords. Directly closing their distance without giving Yi Qingtang a chance to escape, he directed energy into his palm and crashed his palm towards her forehead. Yi Qingtang dodged swiftly and avoided Song Junqia's slap. Chapter 388, Merely Like This, 3. The wind from Song Junqia's palm attack passed Yi Qingtang and crashed on the edge of the ring. With a loud boom, the sturdy ring was shattered by the wind of his attack, kicking up a storm of dust. If his palm landed on Yi Qingtang, her internal organs and even bones would probably be crushed. Song Juanxiu fought with Yi Qingtang continuously. Vicious expressions appeared in the eyes of the 3 disciples who stood at 3 different locations. Then, with full concentration, they directed their energy, and a rush of spirit energy spread around them, forming into the shape of 3 huge dragons in midair. Immediately, the 3 people attacked at the same instant, and the 3 huge dragons in the sky crashed straight into the center of the ring. Song Juanxiu took notice of the rapidly descending illusory dragons from the corner of his eye. He sneered and immediately withdrew backward. Junior sister Yi, take care, Song Juanxiu scoffed and was already a few steps away from Yi Qingtang the instant the 3 huge dragons were about to crash on her. A rumble suddenly boomed in the air. Under the impact of the huge force, the entire ring was smashed into pieces. As spiderweb-like cracks spread all over the ring and clouds of dust were stirred up, dragon roars sounded one after another. The dust obstructed everyone's vision. Illusion of the dragon's breath? Are Song Juanxiu and the rest crazy? The onlooking disciples were astonished by the 3 illusory dragons. This was one of the inner sex cultivation techniques and was extremely lethal. No one expected that they would actually use such a move on Yi Qingtang. Exactly how much does Song Juanxiu want to kill Yi Qingtang? As dust flew around the place, a vicious glint twinkled in Song Junkius' eyes. The 3 disciples had already walked to his side, and the 4 partners in crime watched the dusty haze before them. Senior brother Song, Yiqing Tang is really dead this time, a disciple said with a laugh. Song Juanqiu replied. Since this is what she chose, she can't blame anyone. The winner is set. We can leave already. The 3 disciples nodded slightly. The combined attack of 3 disciples who were at stage 2 of the first heaven definitely was not what Yiqing Tang, who was at stage 1 of the first heaven, could block. They were certain that Yiqing Tang would die without a doubt and immediately prepared to leave the ring with Song Juanqiu. When they reached the edge of the ring, the 3 sharp-eyed disciples saw Enai Shang, who blanked out below the ring with tears in her eyes. Little beauty. I'm afraid your miss is dead this time. What is the point of doing this? If only you obediently submitted to us, you would not cause her to have such an ending. She is already dead now, and no one will be able to protect you anymore. Wait for us, all right, those 3 disciples said insolently with despicable laughs. One of them even bent forward and wanted to touch Enai Shang's face. Fei Ying hurriedly pulled Enai Shang behind him to protect her. But just as that disciple stretched his hand out, a cold glint suddenly shot out from the storm of dust. With a flash, a shrill cry escaped from the mouth of that frivolous disciple. The twinkling demonic blood sword was stuck straight at the edge of the ring with traces of blood on it. The hand that wanted to fool around with Enai Shang fell on the ring, and large gushes of blood jetted out from the disciple's broken arm. My hand. You want to touch my person? You don't have the ability to so. An icy cold voice suddenly sounded from the center of the ring. Chapter 389, Receive Your Death. 1. Alarmed, Song Juanqiu and the rest turned around instinctively. What appeared before them was a black shadow that suddenly flew out from the dust at such a rapid speed that they could not react in time. The black shadow was like a force of evil. Accompanied by a cold glint, the shadow directly scurried to the side of those 3 disciples. Before the 3 people could take a good look at the opposing party's face, a sharp pain spread from their throats. They wiped the spot instinctively but touched a warm liquid. Before they returned to their senses, scarlet blood immediately spattered out from the cut on their throats and showered everywhere like a blood rain. Everything happened merely in the blink of an eye. It was utter silence. A fair hand silently plucked out the demonic blood sword that was stuck on the edge of the ring. Against the splattering blood, Yiqing Tang's devilish smile entered everyone's eyes. With 3 thuds, the 3 disciples whose necks were slit collapsed on the ground. They held on the cut on their necks tightly, but blood never stopped flowing no matter how they tried to stop it. Yiqing Tang swept a look across the 3 bastards with laughter in her eyes. When she caught sight of Enai Shang and Fei Ying, she could not help but smile. What are you crying for? Am I not well and alive? Yiqing Tang looked at Enai Shang, whose face was full of tear stains, and threw a handkerchief over. Wipe your tears away. Watch how these 3 people die. Enai Shang frantically caught the handkerchief and widened her eyes. Surprise and elation filled her eyes when she saw Yiqing Tang standing in the ring. Miss is all right. Miss is really all right. Yiqing Tang turned around and looked at Song Juanqiu, the only one out of the 4 who was still standing on the ring. At that moment, Song Junqiu's face was already covered in blood splatters. Below the blood, there was nothing but shock in his sinister eyes. Why? Why didn't you die? Song Juanqiu looked at Yiqing Tang in disbelief, completely unable to believe that Yiqing Tang was not at all injured from 3 attacks of the illusory of the dragon's breath. Die? Yiqing Tang raised a brow, and her smile deepened. How can 3 people at a mere stage 2 of the first heaven be able to injure me? What do you mean? Uneasiness suddenly crept up in Song Junqiu's heart. 3 people at a mere stage 2 of the first heaven. How could Yiqing Tang say this? She was clearly only at stage 1 of the first heaven. Yi Qingtang did not reply to Song Juanqiu and only looked down as she wiped the blood off the demonic blood sword. Without even lifting an eye, she uttered emotionlessly. I originally intended to play with you all for a while more, but you all dared to touch my person and courted death yourselves. I'm afraid I don't have that good of a temper to allow you all to live any longer. Terror filled Song Juanqiu. The instant Yi Qingtang finished her sentence, she suddenly struck. Her method of attack was completely different this time. In a split second, the demonic blood sword was already blanketed in a scarlet sword aura. In just a moment's time, there was a reverse in the offense and defense. Song Juanqiu lifted his sword in a flurry in an attempt to block Yi Qingtang's attack. The two swords clashed loudly. Sparks flew. Nervousness was nowhere to be seen on Yi Qingtang's face, which only had a smile blooming on her lips. On the other hand, Song Juanqiu's forehead was already covered with sweat, and the arm that held the sword was already numb from the impact. Chapter 390, Receive Your Death, 2, What's Going On? Yi Qingtang's attack completely changed. The onlooking disciples who were still in a state of shock finally returned to their senses, but what they saw caused their jaws to drop in astonishment again. On the ring, Song Juanqiu was forced to retreat with every move by Yi Qingtang. Protecting himself was already a problem, much less fighting back. Impossible. Song Juanqiu is at stage 3 of the first heaven and is only a step away from the second heaven. To win him, one must reach the realm of the second heaven. Could it be that Yi Qingtang is already at second heaven of martial qi level 1? Exclamations erupted in the crowd. Is this a joke? How long did Yi Qingtang enter the inner sect for? 10 days ago, she was only at stage 1 of the first heaven. On what basis could she advance 3 realms and reach the second heaven in such a short span of time? She can't be supernatural, can she? While the disciples found these guesses hard to believe, the scene of Song Juanqiu being overpowered fell into their eyes clearly, and they could only acknowledge their guesses however unwilling they were. On the ring, Song Juanqiu completely panicked. The 3 disciples had already died, and the smell of blood that diffused in the air provoked his nerves. Yi Qingtang was like a demon that crawled out from hell, and her every move was nothing but violent and simply not what he could block. How could this be? How could Yi Qingtang's skills improve so greatly in such a short span of time? Song Juanqiu was truly flustered. At that instant, his previous insolence and arrogance were long gone. Large drops of sweat trickled down from his forehead continuously, and a chill ran through his body. He was not Yi Qingtang's opponent. When this thought appeared in Song Juanqiu's mind, he was engulfed by an invisible fear. Goosebumps rose as he looked at Yi Qingtang, who was smiling sinisterly. Yi Qingtang wanted to kill him. Song Juanqiu was so terrified that cold sweat trickled down profusely. He clearly felt Yi Qingtang's intention to kill him. Song Juanqiu, who realized he was not Yi Qingtang's opponent, was alarmed. He forced Yi Qingtang back 2 steps with difficulty with all his might, and using the time she was pushed back, he turned around and leaped down from the edge of the ring. On the life and death ring, death was determined by destiny. To live, the only way was to flee from the ring. As long as he was off the ring, Yi Qingtang could no longer murder him. Song Juanqiu's mind was madly filled with the thought of escaping for his life. At that very instant, he could no longer care about his reputation and dashed down the ring like a berserk dog. In the flurry, he suddenly saw the warden with whom he had friendly relations coincidentally passing by the ring and screamed shamelessly, "Warden Song, save me!" Warden Song turned around at the sound and was astonished to see Song Juanqiu fleeing from the ring in a panic. What was going on? Previously, he did hear Song Juanqiu mention that he was going to enter the ring with a disciple who just entered the inner sect. Since the opponent was only at stage 1 of the first heaven, he was not concerned, yet unexpectedly. Such a scene would actually play out before him. As Song Juanqiu called Warden Song for help, a glint shot straight towards him. Song Juanxiu was only one step away from leaving the ring, yet this one step could not be crossed no matter how. The demonic blood sword already pierced through his shoulder and locked him right on the pillar at the edge of the ring. Chapter 391, Receive Your Death. 3. Senior Brother Song, the life and death ring hasn't ended. Where do you wish to go? There was a hint of laughter in Yi Qingtang's voice, which sounded behind Song Juanxiu. He only heard it, but it was enough for him to almost break down in fear. Warden Song. Save me. Save me, Song Juanxiu pleaded for help to Warden Song, who was walking over with great strides. Warden Song looked just over 40, and there were some similarities between his face and Song Junkius. He was related to Song Junkius family clan by blood and was ordered by the family clan to look after Song Juanxiu in Xianling sect. Song Juanxiu relied on Warden Song's care and committed many wrongdoings in the inner sect. Yi Qingtang walked to the back of Song Juanxiu. She grabbed his hair with a hand, forcing him to lift his head, while her other hand held on the black dagger and pressed it on his neck. Just as Yi Qingtang was about to slit Song Junkius' neck, Warden Song had already walked to the ring. Stop! Upon seeing Song Junkius' wretched state, Warden Song was startled and shouted immediately. Yi Qingtang's hand that held the dagger paused as she looked at Warden Song. Do you have any instructions, Warden? Warden Song's brows furrowed slightly. What are you all doing? Life and death ring. Don't you know it, Warden? Senior Brother Song and I entered the life and death ring, where death is determined by destiny, isn't it? Yi Qingtang said with a laugh. In Yi Qingtang's hands, Song Junkius' face was ash-white as he trembled in fear and continuously pleaded for help from Warden Song. Warden Song's expression was rather ugly. Song Juanxiu was the eldest son of the Song family, and the family master had ordered him to look after Song Juanxiu. If Song Juanxiu died right before his eyes, he would be in a difficult position. You've already won the life and death ring. You are all disciples of the same sect and should be lenient wherever possible, Warden Song said coldly. The group of disciples who were exhilarated from spectating was shocked and they heard Warden Song. The rules of the life and death ring were rules, but the relationship between Song Juanxiu and Warden Song had long circulated in the inner sect. Now that Warden Song told Yi Qingtang to release Song Juanxiu, if Yi Qingtang was still bent on taking Song Junkius' life, wouldn't it be a slap to Warden Song's face in public? Song Juanxiu was already completely frightened anyway, so why not give Warden Song face instead? Perhaps she would have some benefits in the future. Moreover, it was believed that no disciple in the inner sect was willing to offend a warden. Yi Qingtang was not hurried to reply. With a smile, she looked at Warden Song's stern face and then at Song Juanxiu, who was quivering in fear. Then, she released her grasp on Song Junkius' hair and kept the dagger. Song Juanxiu heaved a huge sigh of relief. With Warden Song here now as his backing, he was not that terrified anymore, and his hatred towards Yi Qingtang arose again. This hatred would never be appeased if he did not kill Yi Qingtang. The disciples understood Yi Qingtang's wise action. If it were them, they would naturally not offend a warden over the grievance of an attendant girl. However, just as everyone thought Song Juanxiu was safe and sound, Yi Qingtang's eyes suddenly sharpened, and the dagger that she just kept was violently stabbed into the left side of his back. The dagger penetrated through the flesh in an instant and pierced right into his heart. Never had Song Juanxiu expected that Yi Qingtang would actually attack him again. He widened his terror-filled eyes under the excruciating pain, and before he could struggle, his breathing stopped. Chapter 392, Receive Your Death. 4. Warden Song stared at Song Juanxiu, who stopped breathing, unbelievably. He raised his head, and his eyes met with Yi Qingtang's smiling eyes. You! Yi Qingtang smiled and pulled out the dagger that pierced through Song Junkius' heart. Blood spurted out onto her face, but her smile remained. Warden Song, the rules of the life and death ring are set by the sect master. I didn't violate any of them, right? Warden Song's face was extremely unpleasant. Based on the rules, Yi Qingtang did not violate the rules at all. Even though she killed Song Juanqiu in front of his eyes, it was still obeying the rules. If he purposely targeted Yi Qingtang on that, he would be the one who violated the rules. Yi Qingtang scanned through Warden Song's face and pulled out the demonic blood sword in Song Junqi's shoulder. She wiped off the blood on the dagger and the sword and then jumped off the ring. Song Juanqiu had to be killed today. Even if she ignored the resentment between them and let go of him in front of Warden Song, Song Juanqiu would never give up. He would definitely ask Warden Song to help him take revenge. Since the possibility existed, she had to kill him first to prevent further troubles. There were only 4 lifeless bodies left on the life and death ring, lying in the pool of blood. The disciples who watched the whole fight were all stunned. They could never even dream about the results today. Song Juanqiu and the 3 people's combined attack could not fend off Yi Qingtang alone. The 4 people who were so confident of their victory had finished their last breath. The way everyone looked at Yi Qingtang had changed. Yi Qingtang's ability must have reached the 2nd heaven to be able to suppress Song Juanqiu, who was at stage 3 of the 1st heaven. She had just entered the sect for only a month. Where did this girl come from? Rumors said that she only possessed a red spirit root. Where else in the world would there be such an insane red spirit root? Yi Qingtang walked to Enai Shang and Fei Ying. She looked at how the 2 little guys were stunned, and she squeezed Enai Shang's chubby face. People who bullied you have all died. Are you relieved now? Her voice was warm and caring. Enai Shang then realized the situation. The tears in her eyes finally flowed out as she saw Yi Qingtang standing in front her safely. She cried out and hugged Yi Qingtang, and her hands held Yi Qingtang's waist tightly. No one would know how worried she was during the whole process. She was really scared that Yi Qingtang would get hurt because of her. Yi Qingtang sighed as she looked at Enai Shang, who was crying in front of her. She gently patted her back and called Fei Ying to follow up. The 3 of them left the place under everyone's gaze. The smell of blood spread out from the life and death ring. Now that the fight had ended, the disciples also dispersed with their frightened minds. The fight today made Yi Qingtang's name famous in the inner sect. How insane was it for her to reach the 2nd heaven of martial qi level 1 in a month from Khanate level 9. As the crowd dispersed, Warden Song stood beside the ring alone. His eyes were fierce as he stared at Song Juanqiu, who was lying on the ring. He raised his head slowly and looked towards Yi Qingtang's direction. His eyes were full of unpleasantness and danger. Chapter 393, Give a Try, 1. Before Yi Qingtang entered her yard, Ji Xianyuan walked over in a serious face. Junior sister Yi, Ji Xianyuan looked at Yi Qingtang and said. Yes? Senior brother Ji. Yi Qingtang answered. I heard about the challenge between you and 4 people on the life and death ring. I wanted to persuade you, but surprisingly you won. I shall congratulate you on your victory, Ji Xianyuan said. Yi Qingtang smiled and nodded. She heard from Fei Ying that Ji Xianyuan visited her a few times during her seclusion period. It seemed that he wanted to persuade her to not go onto the life and death ring. But now that the challenge had ended, the persuasion would be meaningless. Thank you, senior brother Ji. Ji Xianyuan forced a smile and said, I witnessed the challenge today. Your improvement was indeed amazing. I admitted the fact that I lost to you the other day, but the truth showed me that I still looked down on your ability. If the fight between us happened today, I think I can only avoid at most 3 attacks from you. Ji Xianyuan was quite talented. He was diligent in cultivation and remained focused all the time. He entered the inner sect with Yi Qingtang together, and he had reached the 1st stage of the 1st heaven, about to break through to the 2nd stage. His improvement was huge, but it was incomparable to Yi Qingtang, who had entered the 2nd heaven of the martial qi level 1. Junior Sister Yi, I have to say that though you are very talented, you should not have killed Song Juanqiu just now. Ji Xianyuan suddenly changed his focus. Oh. Why is that so? Yi Qingtang asked. Ji Xianyuan scanned through the surroundings to make sure there was no one around. His death is not important, but he has some connections with Warden Song. Warden Song has worked in the inner sect for years. He is always very decisive and fierce and is valued by Elder Lin of the Sword Fraction. Today, Warden Song asked you in front of everyone to not kill Song Juanqiu, but you still killed him in the end. Though you did not break any of the sect's rules, you provoked Warden Song. I'm afraid that, this is not very appropriate, Ji Xianyuan said softly. Ji Xianyuan really believed in Yi Qingtang's talent, and that was why he bothered to remind her. Yi Qingtang's face remained unchanged. But when she heard the name Elder Lin, coldness appeared in her eyes. The person she resented the most in the Xianling sect in her previous life was Elder Lin of the Sword Faction. In her previous life, when her heart of the demon god was exposed, even the sect master did not leak out the news, as he valued the sect bond with her. He gave a private command to ask her to leave the Xianling sect. However, Elder Lin knew the news and wanted to assassinate her secretly after she left the sect. If Yun Shu had not sacrificed himself for her, she would have been ripped apart by Elder Lin for her heart. This time, she entered the Xianling sect again for the Black Heaven water in the mystic realm. The happenings between her and Elder Lin still remained in her heart. She would never forget the scene when Elder Lin smashed Yun Shu's head in front of her. Under the pouring of rain, the only person who treated her nicely died in front of her eyes. Yi Qingtang squinted her eyes and kept her thoughts. She pretended to be casual and smiled at Ji Xianyuan. Thank you for your concern, senior brother Ji. I'm just a normal disciple. I think Warden Song will not purposely make things difficult for me. Ji Xianyuan could only sigh as he saw how casual Yi Qingtang was. He reminded her to be more cautious and left without saying anything else. Chapter 394, Give a Try, 2. Yi Qingtang could finally take a break after the challenge of life and death ring. However, the disappearance of the silver wolf made her speechless. There was no sign of the silver wolf coming back even after a few days, and Yi Qingtang had a weird feeling. It seemed like the silver wolf would not come back this time. Yi Qingtang felt dismayed by the feeling. She could not help but sigh as she stared at the little lightning dragon in her hand. She still decided to try her luck to look for her silver wolf in the inner sect. The in-charge of the sword spirit workshop was sitting outside and smoking an opium pipe. His eyes sparkled as he saw Yi Qingtang walking over. He immediately went over. Little girl, Yi Qingtang, who did not see any trace of the silver wolf, was feeling a little upset. She turned her head instantly when she heard someone calling her and saw the in-charge of the sword spirit workshop walking towards her. Yi Qingtang was shocked. That day, she used the black gold meteorite iron by luck. Did the in-charge realize his loss and decide to find trouble? Little girl, I haven't seen you for days at the sword spirit workshop. There was a rare smile on the in-charge's old face. Yi Qingtang stared the in-charge peculiarly. His attitude was weird today. This guy was always very arrogant. How come today he was so kind to her? Did he not come to ask her to return the dagger? Little girl, I'm so glad to meet you today. We're forging a long sword now. Since you are so interested in forging, join me to take a look. The in-charge smiled and asked, but he did not reveal his inner thoughts. The in-charge always wanted to meet Yi Qingtang again after witnessing her forging ability previously. However, it was not appropriate for him, as an in-charge of the sword spirit workshop, to look for an inner sect disciple. Today, he finally met her by chance. How could he just let her go? Yi Qingtang was confused by the invitation. Before she could figure out anything, she was dragged into the sword spirit workshop by the in-charge. The temperature in the workshop was high. A few blacksmiths were standing around a huge forging table and discussing something. The temperature that the cold iron needs is too high. If we add cold water, the difference in temperature may break the sword. I don't support in doing so. The thickness of the sword is too small. If we do not reduce the temperature on time, the shape will differ. Then all our previous effort will be wasted. We can't take the risk. Anyway, I don't agree with the usual ways to cool down the sword. The blacksmiths were arguing constantly. They did not even realize that the in-charge brought Yi Qingtang over. Yi Qingtang scanned through the furnace beside the forging table. There was a half-forged sword toasting in the fire. The shape of the sword had been formed, and the edge of the sword was extremely thin. The shadow of the flame could be seen through the edge, though it was burning in the flame. What is this? Yi Qingtang asked the in-charge curiously. The in-charge explained. This is the broken ice sword that we forged using these few days. It uses 1,000-year-old cold iron as the material. The body of the sword is very thin, and the edge is even thinner. Yi Qingtang felt a little surprised. She did not visit the sword spirit workshop before in her previous life. She only heard that the blacksmiths inside had very high standards. However, the half-forged broken ice sword showed the skills of the blacksmiths. Chapter 395, Give a Try. 3. The 1,000-year cold iron was very rare and precious. This kind of iron originated from extremely cold places, and it carried low temperature by itself. It would require a very high temperature to melt. Thus, the control of the temperature must be very accurate. Any mistake would damage the coldness of the cold iron itself. The body of the remnant ice sword is extremely thin. It's a problem for us now to cool it down and forge its shape. If we place it into ice water for immediate cooling, the sudden change of temperature may break the sword. If we cool it down slowly, the shape of the sword body may be altered during the process. The in-charge had a very bad headache thinking about the problem. The shape of the remnant ice sword had been forged earlier on. However, they could not find a way to cool it down as the body was too thin. They had dragged on for a few days now. If they continued dragging on, the special property of the ice iron might be damaged. The body of the sword was so thin that it was extremely difficult to forge. Even the same batch of blacksmiths also could not guarantee that they could forge another one. Little girl, what do you think? What's the best way to cool down the remnant ice sword? The in-charge asked Yi Qingtang. Yi Qingtang did not reply immediately. The in-charge's question caught the blacksmith's attention. They turned their head to find out the person whom the in-charge asked. They thought that the person must be a senior blacksmith, but they saw a 15-year-old girl standing in front of them. Their faces changed immediately. How much forging knowledge could a young girl know? They only treated it as a random question and returned to their discussion. Yi Qingtang stared at the remnant ice sword for a while and said slowly, "Cold water may break it. Hot water may alter its shape. I think the frost condensate water may work." Frost condensate water? The in-charge was stunned for a moment. The frost condensate water could not be considered as water by its properties. It was more like a thick liquid with strong adherence. It was ductile with a low temperature and could bear with high heat. It was usually used to fill in the boxing gloves temporarily under high temperatures as it would not evaporate. However, he had never heard of using it to cool down weapons. The in-charge hesitated. Yi Qingtang's words caught the blacksmith's attention again. They looked towards Yi Qingtang, and their eyes were full of disagreement. "Little girl, don't talk when you don't understand. How can the frost condensate water be used to cool down weapons?" "Are you joking?" one of the blacksmiths said unpleasantly. Though the frost condensate water would not evaporate, its conductivity was strong. Its own temperature would increase when it was in contact with hot objects. It could not maintain a low temperature for cooling down. The blacksmiths only treated her as a young girl who did not know anything, and her suggestion was like a joke to them. Yi Qingtang shrugged her shoulder and did not say anything. The remnant ice sword was not hers. She was just answering the in-charge's question. The remnant ice sword must be cooled down today, and no one found an appropriate method until now. The in-charge looked at Yi Qingtang and said, "Little girl, how confident are you if I ask you to take over the task?" Chapter 396, Give a Try. 4. The blacksmiths were stunned when they heard what the in-charge just said. Was the in-charge mad? He wanted a young girl to take over the task of forging the remnant ice sword. Yi Qingtang was also shocked by his request. "Little girl, I know that you are talented in forging. To be honest, the remnant ice sword is required by Elder Mo of the internal inner sect. If you can help us with it, as the in-charge of the sword spirit workshop, I can promise you that the price of anything you want to forge in the future will reduce by 10 times. Yi Qingtang was not interested at first, but her eyes sparkled once she heard the words, reduce by 10 times. The price of forging in the sword spirit workshop was extremely high. If the price could be reduced by 10 times. Yi Qingtang was suddenly interested. She had not visited the sword spirit workshop again as she did not have enough Xianming points, and the price was too high to be affordable for her. Reduced by 10 times. In the future, she would only need to spend a few hundred Xianming points when she came for forging. The difference between a few hundred and a few thousand was insane. "I'm not entirely confident, but if you need, I'll try." Yi Qingtang did not dare to promise, but she used the frost condensate water for cooling down before in her previous life. "How dare you to try when you are not even confident?" The blacksmiths were very dissatisfied. The in-charge stared at them before they could finish their words and said to Yi Qingtang, "We don't have other methods now. Just try. At least it's better to wait for the sword to be damaged." "In-charge, you can't let her try, okay means it's okay. Do you have other ways?" the in-charge said coldly. The blacksmiths shut their mouths. They would not have discussed for so long if they had other ways. "Are you sure?" Yi Qingtang asked again. The in-charge immediately asked people to bring over a few buckets of frost condensate water to show his attitude. "Okay, then I'll give a try." Yi Qingtang rolled up her sleeves and walked to the forging table. The blacksmiths stared at her fiercely. Yi Qingtang did not bother with them as she only thought of her 10 times discount. "Please bring me some ice over," Yi Qingtang asked. "Why do you need ice for?" The in-charge was curious. Yi Qingtang smiled and said, "You'll see later." The in-charge commanded people to bring ice over. Both the frost condensate water and the ice were ready. Yi Qingtang placed the red remnant ice sword into the frost condensate water. The thick frost condensate water immediately surrounded the sword, but it did not evaporate. However, the sword was still hot, and there was no sign of cooling down. "Like I said, how can the frost condensate water cool down the sword?" The blacksmith sneered. The in-charge also frowned and became skeptical. Yi Qingtang did not care about their discussion. She put a large amount of ice on the frost condensate water as the sword was surrounded completely by the frost condensate water. The frost condensate water was extremely hot now due to conduction, and so the ice placed melted immediately and turned into water vapor. Chapter 397, Think Highly of You. 1. Yi Qingtang continued to add ice cubes, and a strange scene played out before everyone's eyes. The temperature of the frost condensate dropped rapidly, and this heat loss was directly conducted to the remnant ice sword. As Yi Qingtang added ice cubes continuously, the redness of the remnant ice sword gradually faded. The in-charge widened his eyes. There's still such a move. Frost condensate was easily affected by the surrounding temperature but would not melt under high heat due to its special texture. When glued tightly on the remnant ice sword, it stably took the shape of the remnant ice sword, while the continuous addition of ice cubes would cause the temperature of the frost condensate to become extremely low. Then, this was directly used to cool the remnant ice sword. The few blacksmiths who looked down on Yi Qingtang previously were dumbfounded. Never had they expected there to be such a use for the frost condensate. Not only could this ensure that the remnant ice sword was not deformed, but it could also cool it gradually without breaking it. It was truly a flawless and perfect method. The few buckets of ice cubes were completely used up, and the remnant ice sword was completely cooled. Yi Qingtang touched the sword handle carefully. After realizing that it was icy cold, she stopped her actions and removed the remnant ice sword from the frozen condensate. It seems that it should be fine now. Yi Qingtang beamed as she looked at the remnant ice sword in her hand. She had to say that this sword was pretty good. After looking at it for a while, she handed it to the in-charge. The in-charge looked at the remnant ice sword in his hands with shock written in his eyes. He only lifted his head up quite some time later as he looked at Yi Qingtang with eyes full of praises. This girl did not just have amazing forging techniques, but even her skills were so dynamic. She was indeed so promising. The blacksmiths who grumbled about Yi Qingtang previously became mutes completely. Thinking back about their prior suspicions now, it was a burn on their faces. "Thank you," the in-charge came back to his senses and said earnestly. "If there's a need in the future, you can proceed according to my promise earlier in the Sword Spirit Workshop." Yi Qingtang nodded. This was what she wanted. The in-charge was speaking to Yi Qingtang, but in the secret chamber in the Sword Spirit Workshop, there were two figures standing quietly. Through a small window in the secret chamber, the elderly who witnessed Yi Qingtang forging a dagger watched Yi Qingtang and then turned slightly to look at the person beside him. "Elder Mo, what do you think of this girl?" There were traces of a smile in the elderly's tone. The person in the secret chamber with the elderly was the Internal Affairs Elder, Elder Mo. He was here for the remnant ice sword today but was dragged into the secret chamber by the elderly before the in-charge brought Yi Qingtang into the Sword Spirit Workshop. The entire process where Yi Qingtang used the frost condensate to forge the item fell into his eyes. "This is the Yi Qingtang whom you mentioned about previously?" Elder Mo said respectfully. The elderly nodded as he touched his mustache. There was a smile in his eyes. "That's right. This girl is young, but her forging skills are amazing. Even old Duan is full of praises towards her. Accepting such a pupil will not be a loss to you." The old Duan whom the elderly said was the in-charge of the Sword Spirit Workshop. There was hesitation on Elder Mo's face. The elderly chuckled after noting the hesitation on Elder Mo's face. "You're so devoted in cultivation, and naturally, you know the importance of weapons. If I don't remember wrongly, there are quite a few damaged weapons in your weapon chamber, aren't there?" Chapter 398, Think Highly of You, 2. It was a casual mention by the elderly, but Elder Mo's heart wavered. There were indeed many weapons that urgently required repair, but the grade of those swords was not low. In the Sword Spirit Workshop, only the warden had the skills to repair it, but he was not the only elder in Xianling's sect. Other elders, as well, would request old Duan for help, and if he continued waiting just like that, God knows when would all his weapons be repaired. If he could have a blacksmith master to repair only his weapons. Elder Mo had this thought immediately, but he still wanted to test Yi Qingtang's forging skills. Elder Mo secretly ordered someone to bring a brocade box from his weapon chamber and then walked out of the secret chamber with the elderly. Yi Qingtang was held up by the warden for quite some time and was about to leave. However, before she could take a step, an aged voice suddenly sounded behind her. "Little girl, hold on." A smile entered the in-charge's eyes when he saw the people who came. Yi Qingtang turned around and saw the elderly from that day walking to her with a smile. There was a sage-like senior was beside him, and after seeing his face, Yi Qingtang could not help but be slightly startled. Internal Affairs Elder, Elder Mo. On the day of the inner sect assessment, Yi Qingtang once met Elder Mo when he returned. However, Elder Mo never noticed her presence then. "Greetings Senior, Elder Mo." Yi Qingtang bowed calmly, though she still found the situation strange. "Little girl, I saw you cooling the remnant ice sword with frost condensate just now. Did you think of this method yourself? The elderly had his hands behind him as he beamed at Yi Qingtang with friendly eyes. Yes. Yi Qingtang replied. The elderly nodded in satisfaction and subsequently looked at Elder Mo, who remained silent beside him. Elder Mo happens to have an item that requires repair. Since you're here, why don't you see whether you can help him? The elderly said casually, but Yi Qingtang was a little taken aback when she heard it. She instinctively looked at the emotionless elder, utterly confused. In her previous life, Yi Qingtang had entered the inner sect before but had only heard of and never seen Elder Mo, who held a high position and great authority. She only knew that this Elder Mo was the highest skilled elder amongst all the elders and was only second to the Grand Elder and Sect Master. Moreover, the Sect Master and Grand Elder Long had the intention of allowing Elder Mo to succeed the position of Sect Master and to become the new Sect Master of Xianling Sect. As expected, those few blacksmiths' faces turned extremely ugly after the elderly spoke. Although Yi Qingtang did use frost condensate to solve a difficult problem that they could not solve, this could not mean anything. They admitted that Yi Qingtang did know some forging techniques, but that was it. Now, the elderly actually asked that girl to help Elder Mo to repair his weapons in front of them blacksmiths. Was this not a slap in their faces? Could their skills be worse than an inner sect disciple? The blacksmiths were dissatisfied and looked at the in-charge, wanting to see his reaction to the matter. Yet, unexpectedly. Little girl, since Elder Mo need help, just give it a try. The in-charge did not even notice his workers' dissatisfied expressions and chimed in after seeing through the intentions of the elderly and Elder Mo. Chapter 399, Think Highly of You. 3. The blacksmiths lost their breaths instantly. Why was the in-charge muddled today? He was actually allowing her to play around. Yi Qingtang's eyeballs moved after hearing the in-charge. Her ultimate goal of coming to Xianling sect was to enter the mystic realm and obtain the Black Heaven water. In the inner sect, only the best disciples had the qualifications to enter the mystic realm. To be selected, disciples required the nomination of an inner sect elder on top of being highly skilled. Yi Qingtang did not have much interaction with the inner sect elders, and if she really wanted to enter the mystic realm, she must obtain the nomination of an inner sect elder. At that thought, Yi Qingtang was naturally glad to have this chance to come into contact with Elder Mo immediately. Yi Qingtang replied, I am willing to give it a try. The elderly laughed in satisfaction and then gave a look to Elder Mo. Elder Mo could tell that the elderly and the in-charge thought highly of Yi Qingtang. With both of them echoing each other, it was clear that they wanted him to accept this girl. Elder Mo still had reservations about Yi Qingtang's forging skills. After remaining silent for a while, he finally handed the brocade box that was over 1 meter long to Yi Qingtang. This is the Tower Sky Sword. It broke a long time ago. Tower Sky Sword. Yi Qingtang's brows were slightly raised. She received the box and opened it. Indeed, there was a broken sword lying in the box quietly. It was not difficult to repair a broken sword, but the sword body of the Tower Sky Sword was not straight and flat as ordinary swords. Thus, repairing it would not be easy. Otherwise, Elder Mo would not have been unable to repair it after dragging on for so long and even have no choice but to request the Sword Spirit Workshop to forge the remnant ice sword. Can you repair it? The elderly looked at the Tower Sky Sword and asked Yi Qingtang. Yi Qingtang flashed a smile. There shouldn't be any problem. Yi Qingtang's words caused the blacksmiths to have an indifferent expression. Wasn't this girl talking too big? Elder Mo had brought the Tower Sky Sword over many times, but even their in-charge did not have the confidence to repair the sword perfectly. Yet this young girl dared to talk big and say there was no problem. Perhaps she saw that this sword belonged to Elder Mo, so she was so hurried to curry favor with him. Such a person who was eager for quick success and instant benefits really displeased them. Elder Mo, similarly, had some suspicions to Yi Qingtang's assured reply but never expressed it and merely waited for Yi Qingtang's next step quietly. Yi Qingtang did not babble and placed the box on the anvil. There were many materials in the sword's spirit workshop today, and she naturally made the most out of them. The sword was Elder Mo's anyway, and so she used materials in the workshop lavishly without going soft. The blacksmiths watched Yi Qingtang move large quantities of materials over and were so anxious that their eyeballs almost popped out. What exactly is this girl doing? Don't fool around if you aren't adept at forging, all right. The blacksmiths beat their chests and stamped their feet, frustrated that they could not go up to stop Yi Qingtang from fooling around. However, the in-charge was already standing beside the elderly and watching her intently. Thus, the blacksmiths could only hold their tongues. All of them thought that the in-charge was not in his right mind today to actually let a disciple who only had little knowledge in forging to fool around here. Yi Qingtang completely ignored the knives-like stares of the blacksmiths as she melted the materials and started hammering. Chapter 400, In-Name Disciple, 1, Sparks Flew. The hammering sound pounded on everyone's mind. The few blacksmiths' lips twitched as they watched Yi Qingtang hammer carelessly. The Tower Sky Sword is a divine weapon. Does this girl's heart not ache when messing around with it? Elder Mo frowned slightly. If not for the fact that others could not repair the Tower Sky Sword, he would definitely not allow Yi Qingtang to act recklessly. Amongst everyone, only the elderly and the in-charge watched intently. Energetic, they came together and pointed at Yi Qingtang's actions while discussing relentlessly. This girl indeed has skills. This hammer was at the right spot. Seeing that Yi Qingtang flattened the blade with a hammer, Elder Mo's brows twitched, and he could only try his best to ignore the elderly's unceasing praises. As Yi Qingtang hammered, the originally broken blades merged with the melted materials. Upon seeing that the broken blade was slowly polished sharp, the blacksmiths, initially scornful, became increasingly shocked immediately. How could it be? Unknowingly, those blacksmiths straightened themselves, and they watched Yi Qingtang with full concentration. When Yi Qingtang was done polishing, she placed the Tower Sky Sword into the water to cool, and a sizzle could be heard. Yi Qingtang removed the Tower Sky Sword and drew a stroke with it. Water droplets scattered around as she danced with the sword, but everyone's eyes never left the Tower Sky Sword an inch. Really, repaired? The dumbfounded blacksmiths rubbed their eyes in disbelief. If they had not personally witnessed it, they would never believe that such a young little girl actually had the ability to repair the Tower Sky Sword that even the in-charge was unable to repair. After confirming that the Tower Sky Sword was finished repairing, Yi Qingtang wiped off the water and placed it back in the box before handing it back to Elder Mo. Your sword, Elder Mo. Astonishment flashed across Elder Mo's eyes. Looking at the flawless Tower Sky Sword in the box, he fell into a trance. The elderly at his side laughed. I really did not judge you wrongly, little girl. Your forging skills are amazing. Yi Qingtang smiled but did not claim any credit. She bowed to Elder Mo and the rest and was about to leave. However. Hold on. Elder Mo looked at the Tower Sky Sword in the box and hid the surprised expression in his eyes before turning to face Yi Qingtang. Do you have anything orders, Elder Mo? Yi Qingtang asked. Elder Mo watched the young girl before him. He had his doubts when conversing with the elderly earlier, but at that very instant, he witnessed her skills himself, and it verified that the elderly was not lying. He took a breather secretly and said, Yi Qingtang, I am willing to accept you as my in-name disciple. What do you think about it? Elder Mo's words brought the blacksmiths back to reality. The astonished expressions in their eyes were replaced with smiles as they looked at Yi Qingtang. Elder Mo had a rather high position amongst the inner sect elders, and being his disciple was unimaginable to many disciples. Although it was only an in-name disciple and not an official disciple, she would receive guidance from Elder Mo as an in-name disciple under him. With Elder Mo's state of cultivation, it was already an extremely great favor to obtain just a few words of guidance. This was an opportunity that others would not have no matter how they prayed. Even the in-charge and elderly had a smile in their eyes. Chapter 401, In-name disciple. 2. Yi Qingtang never expected Elder Mo to say that and was stunned there and then. Elder Mo wished to accept her as an in-name disciple. Yi Qingtang was dumbfounded. Everyone chuckled when they saw that Yi Qingtang was stunned. They thought that Yi Qingtang was surprised by this delightful event that fell from the sky and was too elated. Little did they know that Yi Qingtang felt very complicated. She was aware that Elder Mo's state of cultivation in Xianling sect was very high, and his guidance was important to ordinary disciples. However, Yi Qingtang was a soul who had lived for 300 years. Although she did not have a spirit root in her previous life, she had cultivated for hundreds of years, and thus her martial arts attainments were simply not below that of others. Even for Elder Mo, whose skills were pretty good currently, there was nothing he knew that she did not, and even what she knew was probably more than Elder Mo. What she needed was merely time and the upgrading of her spirit root. As for becoming apprenticed to a master, to Yi Qingtang, it was really not essential. However, looking at everyone's expression that read, "What a good thing, accept it quickly," her heart was even more complicated. Elder Mo had already asked in public, and if she rejected straight up, it was not giving him face. Furthermore, she felt that Elder Mo had a pretty good character. Yi Qingtang pondered, if she really became Elder Mo's in-name disciple, when the mystic realm opened and her skills were higher, the possibility of Elder Mo nominating her would be greater. Then, Yi Qingtang did not think anything else any further. Anyway, she was not expecting Elder Mo to guide her on anything and only treated it as a preparation for entering the mystic realm in the future, plus going along with everyone's expectations. Bowing to Elder Mo, Yi Qingtang said, "It is my blessing to be able to gain Elder Mo's blessing. I am willing to be your disciple." Elder Mo nodded slightly. Yi Qingtang's reply was what he expected. For a disciple who just entered the inner sect, being able to gain an elder's recognition was naturally an extremely joyous matter. You must cultivate diligently in the future. Do not waste your youth. Yes. Yi Qingtang replied obediently. I still have something on. I'll leave first, Elder Mo told Yi Qingtang. When he saw the elderly who was grinning from ear to ear from the corner of his eye, he could only sigh helplessly. This person was really attentive to Yi Qingtang. Disciple sees master off, Yi Qingtang said. Elder Mo exited the sword spirit workshop immediately. Yi Qingtang wanted to leave as well but was suddenly blocked by the beaming elderly. Senior. Little girl, how does it feel to be Elder Mo's in-name disciple? The elderly smiled. Yi Qingtang was rather speechless but remained happy on her face. The elderly touched his mustache and chuckled. Little girl, I brought Elder Mo here for you. Shouldn't you thank me? Yi Qingtang was slightly taken aback. She still had not figured out who this elderly was. The in-charge and Elder Mo both were respectful to him, and this could not help but pique her curiosity on who this person was. Could it be the Grand Elder? This thought suddenly arose but was brushed away by Yi Qingtang. The Grand Elder was extremely mysterious, and even if he was related to the Sword Spirit Workshop, it was not to the extent for him to be here so frequently. Thank you, Senior. Yi Qingtang replied respectfully without overthinking. The senior nodded in satisfaction, though his eyes twinkled. Little girl, it is not enough to just mouth your thanks. Shouldn't you give some real thing? Afterward, he even winked at Yi Qingtang. Chapter 402, In-Name Disciple, 3, Yi Qingtang's lips twitched slightly. At this instant, she dared to confirm that the old imp before her was definitely not the prestigious and respectable Grand Elder. What do you wish to ask for, Senior? The elderly giggled. He suddenly took out a stack of blueprints from his space ring and pulled Yi Qingtang to the anvil by her wrist before spreading out the blueprint. There was a drawing of an extremely sophisticated crossbow. Little girl, I've had the blueprint of this daybreak crossbow for a long time and could not find anyone to forge it. I see that you're pretty gifted. Are you interested to study this with me and make the crossbow? If you can forge it, it can be considered that you've returned my favor, the elderly said excitedly. Yi Qingtang's expression stiffened. This old imp was prepared for this. Even if Yi Qingtang did not want to waste time on it, she was not in a position to say anything and could only brace herself. Since this is your wish, I am willing to try. Good, good, good. Come here. Let's see what materials are more suitable for this daybreak crossbow. After obtaining Yi Qingtang's promise, the elderly was like a child who gained a new toy and happily dragged Yi Qingtang to discuss. The blacksmiths at a side turned pale from shock, and they looked at the in-charge uniformly with nervousness filled in their eyes. In charge, why are you still not doing anything? How could His Excellency play around with a disciple? However, the in-charge shook his head at them, hinting at them to not say anything. Only after that did those blacksmiths retreated silently. The in-charge looked at the elderly who was studying the daybreak crossbow together with Yi Qingtang and could not help but let out a laugh as he shook his head. Really? Since you admire Yi Qingtang so much, you could just make an exception and accept her as a disciple. Why must you persuade Elder Mo to accept her? However, reconsidering his identity, the in-charge felt it was better for Elder Mo to accept Yi Qingtang instead. Otherwise, even if she was just an in-name disciple, as long as she was accepted by this man, the entire Xianling sect would be startled. Speaking bluntly, the entire Sword Spirit Workshop was built only because of this man's interest. In the world, perhaps not many would expect such a respectable person to actually be so infatuated with forging. Only an extremely few people knew about this. At that thought, the in-charge did not interrupt the elderly's interest and went on with his work after looking for a while. On the other side, the elderly was still selecting materials to forge the daybreak crossbow with Yi Qingtang. Then, the two of them began arguing. How about the black gold meteorite iron? The elderly suggested. He still could not get his mind off the dagger that Yi Qingtang forged with the black gold meteorite iron that day and wished that he could forge one as well. The corners of Yi Qingtang's lips twitched. This daybreak crossbow was not small and had an intricate design. If black gold meteorite iron were really used to forge the armament, it would waste quite an amount. You're really speaking loudly and speaking loudly. It's better to use Qingxian steel, Yi Qingtang said patiently. Yi Qingtang explained, but that elderly seemed to be smitten with black gold meteorite iron as he continued to mumble about it. No. We must use black gold meteorite iron. Disapproval was written all over the elderly's face. Yi Qingtang felt a headache. If you're so insistent on it, I have no choice as well. However, I can only back out from the forging subsequently. Although the black gold meteorite iron was good, it was not suitable for all weapons. The elderly was anxious after seeing how Yi Qingtang was going to quit the job and said immediately, Ah. Wait. Qingxian steel then Qingxian steel. Why are you so obstinate? Chapter 403, 3-Sect Competition, 1, Yi Qingtang finally sighed. Before Yi Qingtang could sigh fully, the elderly suddenly spoke. We can add spirit crystal powder into the Qingxian steel as well, right? Then, Yi Qingtang understood why the old imp was so insistent on the black gold meteorite iron. It must be that he saw the process of her forging the dagger and remembered her spirit crystals. Yes, Yi Qingtang replied helplessly. Qingxian steel it is then. The elderly ordered heartily. Yi Qingtang face palmed quietly. Was it still too late for her to back out now? The truth had proved that it was too late for Yi Qingtang to back out even if she wanted to. For the entire afternoon, she was dragged around the Sword Spirit Workshop by the elderly and did not do anything else other than forging the daybreak crossbow with him. Only after night fell could Yi Qingtang then desperately reject the elderly's request to continue forging, and she flew out the Sword Spirit Workshop. The elderly could not help but sigh as he watched Yi Qingtang running away. The in-charge found the elderly's behavior funny yet did not dare to reveal it. Although Elder Mo accepted Yi Qingtang as his disciple, since she was an in-name disciple and not considered an official disciple, she did not need to offer incense and serve tea. This matter had not circulated in the inner sect. Yi Qingtang did not place this matter to heart. On usual days, she cultivated and did her missions as needed. She spent the Xianming points on the Spirit Consonance River and occasionally used the Quenching Flame Pill and Ice Skin Powder to speed up her cultivation. Gradually, her skills improved. However, while the cultivation method using Quenching Flame Pill and Ice Skin Powder was good, it could not be used for a long period of time. This method would be the most efficient only on the first time, and the effects would naturally decrease once the skills increased. Although the improvement would not be as shocking as before, the speed of cultivation was still faster than normal. However, the more one's skills improved, the more Yi Qingtang found the speed of cultivation to slow down. From the first stage of the second heaven to the second stage, Yi Qingtang spent one entire month to advance. Although this speed was a few times faster than normal disciples, it was still very slow to Yi Qingtang. Yi Qingtang noticed that if her spirit root did not continue to upgrade, her cultivation speed would probably become even slower. However, no matter what method she used in the few months, there was no trace of her spirit root upgrading. I must obtain the Black Heaven water. After meditation, Yi Qingtang calmed her heart, and the need for the Black Heaven water was increasingly clear. There were still 3 months to the start of the inner sect mystic realm. Although Yi Qingtang did have some fame in the inner sect after the life and death ring, there was still a distance away from being an elite disciple. To increase her position in the inner sect in 3 months, she had to find a suitable method. At that thought, Yi Qingtang recalled something immediately. In another half a month, it would be time for the 3-sect competition. This competition was among Xianling sect and 2 other sects, which had been going on for many years. During the competition, the sects would send their own inner sect disciples, and elite disciples would not battle according to the rules. To Yi Qingtang, perhaps this was an opportunity. Xianling sect had been suppressed for many years in the 3-sect competition. If she could participate in the 3-sect competition and achieve pretty good results, maybe she had a chance of becoming an elite disciple and thus obtain the chance to enter the mystic realm. Chapter 404, 3-Sect Competition, 2, Yi Qingtang stood up immediately at that thought. The people participating in the 3-sect competition were recommended by inner sect elders. If she wanted to go, she had to look for Elder Mo. In this 1 month, Elder Mo did summon Yi Qingtang twice, but it was for her to repair some weapons for him, though he did provide her some martial arts guidance as well. However, Yi Qingtang was already aware of whatever advice Elder Mo gave, and listening to it was not much help. At that time, Elder Mo was discussing the upcoming 3-sect competition with Elder Lin and other inner sect elders. In the past 10 years, we were always at a disadvantageous position in the competition with Qinglin sect and Wind Moon sect. This has affected the sect's glory. We must not be stuck in the same circumstance this year, an elder said in a serious tone. All the elders' faces were rather ugly after hearing that. Although the 3-sect competition was for the disciples to learn from each other on the surface, it was actually very violent in reality. Whether it was victory or defeat, it was extremely important to a sect's glory. Xianling sect had been in the last place for 10 consecutive years, much to the dissatisfaction to the sect master and grand elder. If there was no improvement in their results this year, it would affect their reputation. The rules of the 3-sect competition is not advantageous to our sect. If our top disciples went for the battle, our Xianling sect would naturally have the confidence to achieve victory, another elder said with a frown. The rules were already laid down hundreds of years ago. Only outstanding inner sect disciples were allowed to battle, and all elite disciples were not allowed to participate. Even though we know it's not advantageous to our sect, these rules cannot be broken, Elder Mo said seriously. Xianling sect's elite disciples were not inferior to Qinglin sects and Wind Moon sects, and they could even defeat them by a margin. However, the rules of the 3-sect competition placed them in a perplexing situation. Elder Lin, do you have any suitable people in mind this year? An elder looked at Elder Lin. Elder Lin had accepted many talented disciples as his official disciple, and Ning Luo, a disciple under him, placed in the top 3 of Xianling's sect. Ning Luo was still young and had brilliant endowments, his future was limitless. However, it was a pity that Ning Luo had already become an elite disciple and was unable to participate in the 3-sect competition. Zhu Chang's condition is pretty good this year. I intend to promote him to an elite disciple this year. Before that, he will represent us in the 3-sect competition. There shouldn't be a problem, Elder Lin said. He was quite satisfied with his disciple, Zhu Changge. Zhu Changge. He isn't bad indeed. However, just to be sure, may the elders put more thought into choosing a suitable candidate to participate in the 3-sect competition this time? We must recover the sect's reputation. Of course. Oh right. Apart from the official disciples who will be battling, the sect master wants us to select some disciples who are worth training as reserves to head to the competition as well. Although they will not take part, they could also broaden their horizons. After a long discussion, the elders finally dispersed. Elder Mo returned to the elders' hall after the discussion. The moment he stepped in, he suddenly saw a tiny figure in the hall. Yi Qingtang. Greetings, Master. Yi Qingtang had waited in the elders' hall for a long time and immediately bowed to Elder Mo when she saw him. Is there any matter? Elder Mo's mind was still on the 3-sect competition. As the internal affairs elder and the elder with the highest skills in the inner sect, he had to set an example. However, it was just that he was focused on cultivation and did not accept many disciples under him. More than that, most of his disciples were inner sect elites who could not participate in the 3-sect competition. Chapter 405, 3-sect competition, 3, I have a request to make. Yi Qingtang went directly to the point. Oh. What is it? Elder Mo fixed his eyes on Yi Qingtang. In this 1 month, although Yi Qingtang was an in-name disciple under him, she was low-key and never publicized it. She never harassed him on usual days and repaired his weapons very swiftly. With that, Elder Mo was rather satisfied with the disciple he just accepted, and thus his attitude towards Yi Qingtang was considered gentle. I wish to participate in the 3-sect competition. Yi Qingtang replied directly. Elder Mo's expression changed slightly as a look of surprise flashed across his eyes. You wish to participate in the 3-sect competition? Yes. Please give me a chance, Master, Yi Qingtang said firmly. She had to become an elite disciple and enter the mystic realm. The black heaven water in the mystic realm was what she needed the most. In her previous life, the black heaven water was obtained by Ning Luo in the mystic realm this year. Yi Qingtang was very aware that once she missed the chance this year, she would no longer have any fate with the black heaven water. Elder Mo looked at Yi Qingtang without saying anything. The 3-sect competition was of great significance to the sect. Yi Qingtang had only entered the inner sect for over 2 months, and the priority was to increase her skills. Just based on her credentials, she simply had no qualification to participate in the 3-sect competition. Yi Qingtang, you've only entered the inner sect for a short time. The 3-sect competition is significant to the sect. There's no need for you to be so anxious to participate in it this year. It was not that Elder Mo was making things difficult for Yi Qingtang intentionally, but he truly felt she was not suitable. Yi Qingtang's spirit root was only a red spirit root, which was too low. There was not much difference at the current stage, but the more her skills increased, the harder it would be for her to improve, making it difficult for her to attain a higher state of cultivation. Moreover, although her skills were considered pretty good amongst the new disciples, it was not outstanding. To Elder Mo, he admired Yi Qingtang's talent in forging more. Yi Qingtang, however, insisted. I only wish to participate in the 3-sect competition. Please permit it, Master. Elder Mo could not help but have a headache. If other disciples had such a request, he would reject them straight up without saying anything else. However, he was pretty satisfied with Yi Qingtang's performance in this 1 month, and since she was so persistent, it was not nice of him to reject so forcefully. You really wish to go to the 3-sect competition? Elder Mo asked again after a moment of silence. Yes. Yi Qingtang's gaze was firm. Elder Mo sighed lightly. Since you're so bent on it, I can allow you to. However, even if I permit you to go, you can only be a reserve disciple at most. Are you still willing? Previously, the sect master wanted them to select some disciples worth training to participate in the 3-sect competition as a reserve. This type of disciples usually would not need to battle and were merely there to widen their horizons. If Yi Qingtang really wanted to go, it was not impossible to give her the reserve position. Yi Qingtang's eyes twinkled, and she replied immediately. I am willing. Thank you for agreeing to my request, Master. Whether it was a reserve or whatnot, there was a chance as long as she could head to the 3-sect competition. Yi Qingtang would not let the slightest opportunity away. It is settled then. I will submit your name over. At that time, you can just go with the other selected disciples, Elder Mo said. Noted. I'll do as you say. Elder Mo sighed and then took out an esoteric book from his space ring and handed it to Yi Qingtang. Chapter 406, Xianyuan Pill, 1. Yi Qingtang's eyes brightened, but after seeing the words in the book, the light in her eyes extinguished instantly. What was written on the book was, Moonlight Step Swordplay Technique. This Moonlight Step Swordplay Technique is a high-level technique of Xianling sect. If you can master it, it will be extremely powerful. However, this swordplay technique is extremely hard to train. If you cultivate for another 3 to 5 years diligently, you'll be able to understand some basics. Take this with you today. Elder Mo did his part as a master. Only a sparse number of disciples in the inner sect mastered this Moonlight Step swordplay technique. From this, one could imagine its difficulty level. When Yi Qingtang saw the Moonlight Step swordplay technique book, there was a subtle change in her expression. Moonlight Step swordplay technique. Wasn't this the swordplay technique she practiced so thoroughly in her previous life? The corners of Yi Qingtang's lips twitched, but looking at Elder Mo's behavior, it was inconvenient for her to express anything, and she could only accept it with feigned gratitude. Thank you, Master. Elder Mo nodded slightly and asked again. Do you have any other matters? No more. You can leave then. Elder Mo waved a hand. He was more or less helpless to Yi Qingtang's sudden request. It was a good thing that reserve disciples did not need to battle. Otherwise, he would probably not agree to her request either. With Elder Mo's words, joy filled Yi Qingtang, and she was ready to take her leave. Nonetheless, Elder Mo suddenly recalled something and called out to Yi Qingtang. Yi Qingtang, make a trip to the Sword Spirit Workshop today. The smile on her face froze for a moment. Sword Spirit Workshop. Over this period of time, she was almost allergic to those 3 words. After being dragged by the elderly to study the daybreak crossbow, the in-charge would directly pull her into the workshop and tie her to the elderly's side whenever she passed by, where she would be forced to continue forging the daybreak crossbow. Yi Qingtang almost died from such suffering. Helpless, she took a roundabout route now. However, never in a million times would Yi Qingtang expect Elder Mo to actually ask her to walk right into the trap. Yi Qingtang was overwhelmed with anguish as she glimpsed at Elder Mo with a strange expression which read, How much money do you owe that elderly exactly? Elder Mo was a little awkward from Yi Qingtang's gaze. He did not intend to concern himself with this matter, but His Excellency kept nagging about it and blamed him for not bothering his disciple. He was very helpless as well. Since Yi Qingtang happened to be here today, he treated it as merely giving her a task. No matter how unwilling Yi Qingtang was, she had no choice but to go to the Sword Spirit Workshop since Elder Mo personally asked her. After all, she just made a request to Elder Mo, and he had already agreed to it. If she did not give him face this time, it would really be courting death. "I'll head over right now." Yi Qingtang sighed and left after bowing. Elder Mo watched Yi Qingtang's back view after making a prompt decision and was at a loss of whether to laugh or cry. With unwilling footsteps, she arrived at the Sword Spirit Workshop. The moment she reached the entrance, she saw that elderly strolling around the furnaces. When he noticed Yi Qingtang, his eyes brightened instantly. "Wow, little girl. Why are you willing to come here today?" The elderly beamed at Yi Qingtang. His smile was like that of a person whose crafty plot succeeded, and Yi Qingtang seriously had the urge to box him. Why was she here? Wouldn't he be clear? Yi Qingtang truly suspected that Elder Mo owed this elderly a lot of money. Otherwise, why would such a highly respected person betray his disciple? Chapter 407, Xianyuan Pill, 2. It is good that you're here. Take a look for me. This daybreak crossbow is already pretty much done with only some details left. Let's make use of these few days to finish forging it. The elderly completely ignored Yi Qingtang's resentful expression and cheerily pulled Yi Qingtang to look at the results of his effort. When Yi Qingtang heard, "make use of these few days," she felt her mind explode. "Senior, I don't think I'll have time in the next few days." "Don't have time? You're deceiving me again." The elderly groaned unhappily. Yi Qingtang replied, "I'm not deceiving you. I am participating in the 3-sect competition half a month later and will need to cultivate hard in the coming days. Otherwise, wouldn't I tarnish the sect's reputation in the 3-sect competition?" Yi Qingtang was really afraid of this energetic elderly and could only use the sect's glory as an excuse. After he heard about the 3-sect competition, a surprised look flashed across the elderly's face. He scanned Yi Qingtang with eyes full of suspicion. "Didn't you enter the inner sect for a few months only? Even if it's the 3-sect competition, it has nothing to do with you. Don't lie to me. I really am not. I am going there as a reserve." Reserve, the elderly was in thought as he swept a look at Yi Qingtang. "You only entered the inner sect for not long, yet you're heading to the 3-sect competition, where outstanding disciples from the 3 sects would be present. Although they are not considered elites, they are all skillful. Why are you joining for nothing?" "Since I am a disciple of the sect, of course, I am willing to strive for the sect's glory." Yi Qingtang lied blatantly without guilt. The elderly raised a brow at Yi Qingtang. "Oh, you're pretty ambitious." "Of course." "Hold it, I know that you're ambitious already. How about this? As long as you come here for 4 hours after your cultivation from now on, I'll give you a Xianyuan pill. What do you think?" The elderly stroked his chin as he laid the conditions. Xianyuan pill. Yi Qingtang was startled. The Xianyuan pill was a master-grade pill which was extremely beneficial in cleansing one's spirit energy and increasing one's skills. However, this pill was difficult to refine, and its ingredients were even more difficult to obtain. Even if Yi Qingtang knew how to refine it, she could not gather the ingredients. Never had she expected that this seemingly scheming old imp would actually have a Xianyuan pill. "You can't be lying to me, right? You have the Xianyuan pill?" Yi Qingtang looked at the elderly suspiciously. The elderly immediately narrowed his eyes. "Little girl, how dare you doubt me?" Then, the elderly waved for the in-charge to come over and pointed to Yi Qingtang. "Tell her whether I have the Xianyuan pill." The in-charge was busy forging and was confused after being called over suddenly, completely at a loss why the Xianyuan pill was brought into question. "Girl, he has the Xianyuan pill indeed." The elderly placed his hands on his hips and snorted. He gave Yi Qingtang a proud look. Yi Qingtang was silent. "How about it? Do you agree? 4 hours a day in exchange for 1 Xianyuan pill." "Little girl, not everyone can earn such a huge bargain," the elderly said. The in-charge finally understood what was going on. After hearing that the elderly actually wanted to give Yu Qingtang a Xianyuan pill, his eyes almost popped out. You're too generous. Such an exorbitant Xianyuan pill to be given out just like that? The in-charge could only feel his heart bleed. Chapter 408, Xianyuan Pill, 3, Yu Qingtang found it pretty strange as well. A casual Xianyuan pill that this elderly took out was already a master-grade pill. However, since she could gain a bargain, obviously, she would be easier to talk to. Alright, I'll promise you. However, you must give me the Xianyuan pill first. You're still pretty smart, the elderly looked at Yu Qingtang and said. I will give it to you. I won't lie to you. I'll send someone to bring the Xianyuan pill over. Come look at the daybreak crossbow with me first. The elderly returned back to the topic of forging after just a few sentences. Sure, senior. Yu Qingtang immediately became obedient. Stop calling me senior already. It's annoying to hear. My surname is Wu. You can just call me Venerable Wu from now on, the elderly said. Yes, Venerable Wu. Yu Qingtang replied very obediently. Venerable Wu nodded in satisfaction then and dragged Yu Qingtang into the forging room without wasting any time. After witnessing everything, the in-charge became extremely amused as he watched Venerable Wu drag Yu Qingtang away. In-charge, is it really suitable for His Excellency to do this? The blacksmith aside swallowed his saliva. Xianyuan pill was a treasure, but it was to be exchanged for 4 hours of this girl's time every day. The in-charge returned to his senses and was a little helpless. Don't worry. If you want it, then increase your own forging skills. If you had that girl's abilities, perhaps even you would have a share of the Xianyuan pill. The blacksmith scurried back to his position immediately after being stifled by the in-charge's words. After watching Yu Qingtang repair the tower sky sword, he clearly recognized the difference in forging skills between him and Yu Qingtang no matter how unwilling he was. How was there any comparability? According to the agreement, Venerable Wu sent someone to deliver the Xianyuan pill before Yu Qingtang left. Yu Qingtang was in an uplifted mood after obtaining the Xianyuan pill. This pill was a treasure that others would not be able to buy with money. With this, she was more confident in the 3-sect competition half a month later. She was at stage 2 of the second heaven right now. Relying on this Xianyuan pill, she should be able to break through to stage 3 of the second heaven in the coming half a month. Everything was very successful, but only the silver wolf was missing. Yu Qingtang ordered Ni Shang and Fei Ying to search for a long time, but their search was to no avail. No matter how regretful she was, she could only suppress it temporarily and hope that the silver wolf would return someday. Yu Qingtang cultivated diligently every day, and her diligence influenced Ni Shang and Fei Ying. These 2 little fellows cultivated with all their might, afraid that the previous incident would repeat once again. Days passed. In the blink of an eye, it was the 3-sect competition. On the day to leave, Yu Qingtang arrived as scheduled and unexpectedly saw the Blood Moon Sect Elder in the team. The Blood Moon Sect Elder stood in the team with an impatient expression. When he saw Yu Qingtang walking to his side, a chill ran down his spine. Why are you here? Yu Qingtang looked at the Blood Moon Sect Elder curiously. She was occupied with cultivation in the past few days and had no time to control him. Unexpectedly, he was actually on the team as well. The Blood Moon Sect Elder fixed his emotions. Why am I here? Isn't it all because that Elder Qin wants me to participate in the 3-sect competition? The Blood Moon Sect Elder was accepted into the inner sect as an exception because of his competence on arrays. Elder Qin valued him and provided him much guidance on usual days. The Blood Moon Sect Elder could not be bothered to bullshit with Elder Qin and thus answered him eloquently, wanting to end it as early as possible. Yet, unexpectedly, his performance won Elder Qin's favor even more and directly submitted his name for the 3-sect competition. Chapter 409, Drifting Cloud Island. 1. The Blood Moon Sect elder was extremely aggrieved. What had the stupid competition between the sects got to do with him? Why had the revolving soul orb that Yi Qingtang gave to Elder Qin not exploded? Hurry up and explode and kill that annoying Elder Qin. Yi Qingtang looked at the Blood Moon Sect elder's unwilling expression and thought it was funny. Thinking about it, it was true though. He was a mighty Blood Moon Sect elder yet was trapped in the sect right now and still had to participate in a competition between sect disciples. If this was circulated, everyone's jaws would probably drop. Yi Qingtang joined the team as a reserve this time, so she did not need to be overly nervous. Rather, the Blood Moon Sect elder was sent by the Array faction to officially participate in the competition and was summoned by the warden leading the team to listen to instructions. This competition was very important to Xianling sect. It had been dormant for 10 years, and whether they could rise was dependent on the 3-sect competition. This trip was led by Elder Mo and Elder Lin, as well as the other 3 elders of the Fist faction, Array faction, and Herbal faction. Together, all of them headed to Drifting Cloud Island where the 3-sect competition was held. The Drifting Cloud Island was situated above the ocean and enveloped in the clouds. People who were not from the 3 sects would be unable to find this place. 1,000 years ago, Drifting Cloud Island had rich spirit energy and could be said to be the sacred land for cultivation. The owner of the island once opened the island to the public for many powerful figures to cultivate there. Throughout the 1,000 years, the spirit energy on Drifting Cloud Island remained to be contended by sect disciples. All the sects wished to send their disciples to cultivate on the island, and there was no lack of traces of struggle amongst the sections. To prevent the island from being ruined in the battles, the owner of the island made an agreement with the 3 most powerful sects in the battle that year to turn the endless fights into a competition, where the sect in the first place could send 10 disciples to the island. The second-place winner had a quota of 5 people while the sect in the last place would have no fate with the spirit energy on the island. The 3 sects had no objection to this rule when it was laid. Throughout hundreds of years, the sects had each been the champion and sent many disciples to the island, where the skills of those disciples who cultivated on the island improved by leaps and bounds. However, there was a change in this situation of balance in the last 100 years. The people from Xianling sect rode a cloud boat and passed by the horizon, heading towards the legendary Drifting Cloud Island. Initially, Xianling sect's skills were not considered weak amongst the 3 sections. Since the rules of the 3-sect competition was fixed, Xianling sect had sent nearly 100 disciples to the Drifting Cloud Island as well. However, in the last 100 years, it seemed that our sect never sent any disciple anymore. A disciple mumbled as he watched the lingering clouds around him. It can't be. Why did it become this way? It was the first time that this disciple participated in the 3-sect competition and curiosity arose within him. Wind Moon sect has always been powerful while Qinglin sect used to be weak. However, Qinglin sect earned the support of the Yunshao sect 100 years ago, and their abilities improved greatly in this 100 years. They were originally placed at the bottom but had chased up now. Yunshao sect? The Xianling sect disciples had a shocked expression after hearing the 2 words. Although Xianling sect and Yunshao sect were both sects, there was a world of differences between them. Even if one was an elite disciple in the inner sect of Xianling sect, he or she was at most an outer sect disciple in Xianling sect, and entering the inner sect was completely impossible. Chapter 410, Drifting Cloud Island, 2, Yunshao sect. That is one of the super sects. I didn't think that Qinglin sect would have the luck to earn the favor of a super sect. Envy filled the disciples. There were numerous treasures in a sect, and the Yunshao sect was all the more so one of the super sects, which were above normal sections. Many of the mighty figures on earth were from Yunshao sect. As everyone was engaged in the discussion, Yi Qingtang's expression sharpened slightly. To others, Yunshao sect shone with boundless radiance, but to her, it was a bottomless chasm. Currently, Yi Yu was the official disciple of the Yunshao sect master. Yi Qingtang was clearly aware of the gap between Xianling sect and Yunshao sect. She had been cultivating desperately merely to close the gap between Yi Yu and her, and entering Xianling sect was to obtain the Black Heaven water. However, to truly possess the strength to fight Yi Yu, it was impossible to simply rely on the Xianling sect only. Yi Qingtang already had a plan in mind, and now, she only needed to gradually walk down this path of revenge. You seem to be a little interested in that Yunshao sect? The Blood Moon sect elder beside Yi Qingtang sharply sensed the change in Yi Qingtang's expression. Why did this girl's eyes become this sharp after hearing the words Yunshao sect? Yi Qingtang looked at the Blood Moon sect elder and said, "You are the one who is interested, aren't you? Wasn't Blood Moon sect annihilated by the combined effort of many super sects that year? If I remember correctly, wasn't Yunshao sect also one of the forces who wiped out your Blood Moon sect?" The Blood Moon sect elder originally wanted to fish some answers out from Yi Qingtang, yet his face froze because of Yi Qingtang's words. The elder who led the troops in the battle against Yunshao sect back then was not me. Furthermore, if the super sects had not shamelessly attacked with combined forces, which of them is the Blood Moon sect's opponent if they fought alone? A group of despicable and lowly people. So much for calling themselves righteous sections. The Blood Moon sect elder clearly disliked the super sects who were at the tip of the pyramid as he spoke of them disdainfully. Yi Qingtang supported her chin with an arm without continuing the Blood Moon sect elder's words. The Blood Moon sect was annihilated back then because of the combined forces of the first-class super sects, which included Yunshao sect, where mighty figures in the world were recruited to encircle and suppress the Blood Moon sect. Regarding his past enemy, it would be weird if the Blood Moon sect elder had a good attitude. Passing by layers of clouds, an emerald island gradually appeared before everyone's eyes. The chattering disciples noticed the drifting cloud island not far away, and their eyes twinkled. Rumor has it that the drifting cloud island is covered with holy light, and I initially thought it was fake. I never thought that there really would be holy light. Drifting Cloud Island was surrounded with holy light and surging with spirit energy, attracting all the disciples' attention. The elders said it already. If we can achieve good results for Xianling sect this year, we will have a chance to cultivate on the island. If I could cultivate on the island for about a year, how good would it be? As everyone wished enviously, the cloud boat had already reached the island and slowly descended at the designated location. It was only when they reached the island did they realize that the supposed drifting cloud island was not sitting on water. The island was actually 100 meters away from the surface of the ocean. Looking down from the island, one could see the waves of the sea slowly passing by from 100 meters below. All the disciples' eyes shone as the sight before them was a novelty. Just standing on the drifting cloud island, they already sensed rich spirit energy embracing them as though their entire body was nourished in the immense spirit energy. Chapter 411, Drifting Cloud Island, 3, Yi Qingtang took a deep breath. She only heard rumors about the drifting cloud island in her previous life and had no fate to come to the island. Unexpectedly, the spirit energy on the island was actually about the same as in the Spirit Consonance River. Standing here for a while was akin to being soaked in the Spirit Consonance River. No wonder inner sect disciples eagerly fought for a place as a reserve even though they could not participate in the match in her previous life. Over the course of the 3-sect competition, they could remain on the drifting cloud island for a few days, where they earned a few days of spirit energy nourishment without needing to do anything. The owner of the drifting cloud island had already sent people to receive the disciples from the 3 sections. After approaching the islander, Elder Mo, and the rest headed to the main venue of the 3-sect competition under that islander's lead. This drifting cloud island is pretty interesting, the Blood Moon sect elder scanned the island. It was rare that he was satisfied with the place. Yi Qingtang did not reply to him and merely looked past the forest on the island. When she looked at a cliff on the island, a figure suddenly flashed past from the cliff. Yi Qingtang saw a slight trace of the person but was a little taken aback by what she saw. Musu. Confusion unveiled in her eyes. Why did she feel that the person on the cliff just now looked similar to the Musu, the city lord of Fallen Star's city? However, that figure disappeared too quickly, and even if Yi Qingtang wished to confirm it another time, there no longer was a chance to. Yi Qingtang swept the confusion in her heart away. Fallen Star's city was extremely far away from Drifting Cloud Island, and she had never heard that Musu had any relations to Drifting Cloud Island. Furthermore, Yi Qingtang was not bothered whether or not Musu was on the Drifting Cloud Island. Who she was truly concerned of was the person behind Musu, Han Sungming. Thinking of that palace, Lord of Antiquity Palace, Yi Qingtang felt goosebumps all over as her eyes uncontrollably landed on the ring that was forced on her finger. Up until now, Yi Qingtang's heart still quivered whenever she recalled the shocking words that a certain someone said that night in the Spirit Condensation Mountain village. She tried to pull the ring on her finger off many times, but it was as though the ring was glued on her finger and did not budge at all. She could not possibly chop her hand off. Perhaps I saw wrongly. Yi Qingtang comforted herself. The palace, Lord of Antiquity Palace, should not be so free to stroll on the Drifting Cloud Island. On the other side, Musu was standing on the cliff of Drifting Cloud Island watching the people in Xianling sect uniforms enter the island slowly. Once he caught sight of that familiar figure, astonishment flashed past his eyes, and he immediately darted off, disappearing from the cliff without a trace. Your Highness. Musu swiftly reached a cavern hidden in the dense forest at the bottom of the mountain. There was a grotto heaven in that cavern which was just like a small-sized palace. A wide jade stage was in the center of that palace. On the jade stage, a pallid Han Sungming was sitting cross-legged. Han Sungming looked up slightly. His good-looking face was, however, a few shades paler at that instant. Glaring streaks of blood flowed down from his forehead to his collar. Your Highness, I saw the Xianling sect team entering the Drifting Cloud Island just now, and Lady Yi is also in the team. Musu kneeled on a knee and reported everything he saw to Han Sungming. There was not a slight trace of emotion on Han Kangming's face. His pale lips closed as a faint look of surprise flashed across his eyes quietly. Chapter 412, Drifting Cloud Island, 4. Subsequently, Han Sungming did not say anything as he shut his eyes and calmed his mind. There was worry in Musu's eyes when he saw Han Kangming's reaction, but he could only retreat to a side silently without disturbing Han Sungming in his meditation. His Highness' condition seems to be even worse. Anxiety filled Musu. After losing the suppression of the heart of the demon god, the surging aura of the evil in the world invaded Han Kangming's body continuously. Even though he possessed such godly powers, without the suppression of the heart of the demon god, the overbearing powers were not what any human body could contain. His Highness stayed beside Lady Yi as a silver wolf previously and could more or less use the heart of the demon god to suppress the aura of the evil in his body. However, Lady Yi often went out on missions, and although His Highness could follow nearby from a distance away, it was still unable to suppress the overactive aura of the evil. If this went on, he was afraid that His Highness' body would no longer be able to accommodate this powerful force. If His Highness even used a little energy to turn into a silver wolf now, his body would probably shatter. It was impossible to even go to Lady Yi already. Now, his condition could only be stabilized by making use of the spirit energy on Drifting Cloud Island, though it was still unknown how long this method could sustain for. I still have to think of a way to let His Highness stay beside Lady Yi more often. Musu was rather frustrated. Staying beside Yi Qingtang as a silver wolf was simply not a long-term plan. However, he always felt that Lady Yi seemed to be very afraid of His Highness. At the Spirit Condensation Mountain village the other time, His Highness already requested Lady Yi to marry him, but her reaction was really. Musu sighed secretly. He was extremely worried about His Highness' condition. When they were unaware of the location of the heart of the demon god, His Highness spent most of the time on Drifting Cloud Island to suppress the aura of the evil and would only be out once in a while. Yet, now that the heart of the demon god was found, they could not retrieve it immediately. Just thinking about it, Mu Su felt that it was as though he had a mouthful of blood that would never disappear completely. I don't know if His Highness' condition would improve with Lady Yi on Drifting Cloud Island as well. If it does improve, maybe he can even use this chance to develop his relationship with Lady Yi. At that thought, Mu Su looked at Han Sungming, who was seated on the jade stage. When he saw the blaring streaks of blood on Han Kangming's neck, he was even more anxious. Mu Su was filled with worry on this side, and on the other, the Xianling sect people were already led to the main venue of the three-sect competition. Disciples from the other two sects were already gathered at the wide court. Elder Du, I heard that you accepted an official disciple with extremely high talent. Do you intend on sending him out this year? An elder from Qinglin sect asked a Wind Moon sect elder with a smile. The Wind Moon sect elder replied. Qingyu is still young. I brought him this year only to accumulate experience. I don't intend to send him out. That's a pity then. I was pretty shocked when I heard that Shin Qingyu entered your Wind Moon sect. That child has been very gifted since young. I still intended to accept him as a disciple previously, but Elder Du beat me to it. Coming to think of it, he will ultimately display his skills in the three-sect competition. I will be really expectant at that time, the Qinglin sect elder said cheerfully. You're too polite, Elder Qian. You already have such an excellent and unrivaled disciple, Fu Lingtian. There's no need to be bothered by anything else, said the Wind Moon sect elder. Chapter 413, Oddity, 1, Lingtian should become an elite disciple at the end of this year. This is the last time that he will be participating in the three-sect competition. I initially wanted to watch him and Shin Qingyu spar, but I guess there's no chance to this year, the Qinglin sect elder said with a smile. Although he was exchanging polite words with the Wind Moon sect elder, there was smugness in his tone. His disciple, Fu Lingtian, topped the three-sect competition for 3 consecutive years, and his skills were not to be belittled on. The Wind Moon sect elder smiled as he chided the Qinglin sect elder for being shameless in his heart. Fu Lingtian clearly had the qualification to become an elite disciple in Qinglin sect since a long time ago, but the Qinglin sect elder delayed it by a year in order to let him participate in the three-sect competition for another year. The Qinglin sect elder still wished for Fu Lingtian and Shin Qingyu to spar. While Shin Qingyu was very gifted, he was still young and was merely 12 years old this year. How could he spar with Fu Lingtian, who placed first for 3 consecutive years? As the two sect elders tested each other through their conversation, the people from Xianling sect walked over. Elder Du, Elder Qian, greeted Elder Mo, the leader of the Xianling sect elders. Elder Mo. Elder Du nodded slightly. Elder Qian swept a glance across the Xianling sect team and said, Elder Mo, the people participating in the three-sect competition this year from Xianling sect seem to be the same. Elder Mo did not say anything, and the elders behind him had a rather ugly expression. The three-sect competition will officially begin tomorrow. I still need to instruct the disciples and will not accompany you all anymore. I'll take a leave first. Elder Qian lifted a hand to signal and left. Elder Du left soon after as well. As the elders from the two sects who were initially chatting happily left, the faces of Elder Mo and the rest who were still standing there turned dull. Yi Qingtang followed the other disciples into the court, and her brows were furrowed slightly when she saw the Qinglin sect and Wind Moon sect elders leaving after greeting the Xianling sect elders perfunctorily. Witnessing the sight, the other Xianling sect disciples similarly did not feel good. In the recent 100 years, Xianling sect barely had any achievements in the three-sect competition, where the top disciple was mostly from the Wind Moon sect and the Qinglin sect. Currently, Qinglin sect's fame gradually increased due to Yunshao sect's support, and with Wind Moon sect, it was a fight between two tigers. Rather, it was Xianling sect which seemed to be absent from the battle. Why do I find the person that the two sect elders mentioned a little familiar? A Xianling sect disciple asked curiously. Why wouldn't it be? That Fu Lingtian topped the three-sect competition for 3 years consecutively. It is said that he is extremely talented, and his comprehension abilities are very strong. I didn't know that he would still be here this year. I heard of that Xinqingyu before. It is said that he is a blue spirit root. Although he is only about 12 or 13, he is extremely tough, and Elder Du from the Wind Moon sect babed him a lot. He is still young now though. I reckon that in at most 3 to 4 years, we should be able to see him on the ring of the 3 sect competition. Blue spirit root? Are you for real? In this day and age, a blue spirit root is extremely rare. I've never heard of many people who have it. In our sect, the highest grade spirit root seems to only be a green spirit root. Obviously. Do you think that blue spirit roots are carrots and vegetables that can be found all over the ground? Let me tell you, at the beginning of this year, the sect master of the Yunshao sect personally accepted a person with a blue spirit root as his official disciple. The disciples gasped upon hearing the information. The person had a blue spirit root and was even favored by the sect master of a super sect. Even if one used their bum to think, it was obvious that the disciple accepted by Yunshao's sect master would become extremely powerful in no time. Chapter 414, Oddity, 2. Apart from those famous powerful figures, the number of people in the younger generation who possess a blue spirit root could be counted with just a hand. Ah, that seems to be Xinqingyu. A sharp-eyed disciple noticed a shy young boy with delicate features in the crowd of Wind Moon sect people and pointed towards him. A cold glint flashed across Yi Qingtang's eyes after listening to the Yunshao sect rumors from aside. She looked in the direction that the person was pointing to. Yi Qingtang was stunned from this look. Wasn't the young boy who was standing amongst the Wind Moon sect disciples the little guy she met in Deer City that day? Back then, Yi Qingtang could tell that he was very gifted but had too little experience and was very pure. Yet, unexpectedly, he actually had such a powerful background. Isn't this, that little imp? The Blood Moon sect elder beside Yi Qingtang took a look and identified Xinqingyu in an instant. Was this not the little boy whose body he wanted to take over? He already knew that this boy's endowments were extremely stunning that time, and his body was the most suitable for the Blood Moon sect elder to take over. However, Yi Qingtang foiled his plans in the end and forcefully stuffed him into Zhou Chu's lousy body. If he had seized Xinqingyu's body back then, his current skills would probably be better than Yi Qingtang. At that thought, the Blood Moon sect elder could not help but throw Yi Qingtang a resentful look. This darn girl was clearly born to jinx him. If he had not met her in Deer City, he would probably be living the life somewhere a long time ago. Why would he still need to be cooped in a sect and suffer the restraint of a group of people from the righteous sects? The more the Blood Moon sect elder thought about it, the more infuriated he was, and he could not stop himself from shooting a glare at Yi Qingtang. Yi Qingtang raised a brow as she tapped on the demonic blood sword casually. A chill ran down the Blood Moon sect elder's spine, and his face immediately froze. Shameless. If he could not defeat her, he would not let himself be bullied like this. What could the Blood Moon sect elder do though? Even if he was already burning with hatred, he did not dare to show it on his face at all and could only smile at Yi Qingtang awkwardly. Yi Qingtang looked away. Then, the other Xianling sect disciples were suddenly looking at a tall and good-looking disciple in the Qinglin sect team. In the group of Qinglin sect people, the disciple's position was clearly different from that of others, and even the Qinglin sect elders smiled at him. Fu Lingxian's condition this year seems to be even better than last year. This fellow clearly could be promoted as an elite disciple of Qinglin's sect but just had to participate in the 3-sect competition with us. The Xianling sect disciples were moodier the more they thought about it. It was not that their skills were bad, but Fu Lingtian was truly powerful. In the past few years, as long as he was present, the disciples from other sects did not need to think about being the champion of the 3-sect competition. The disciples who were officially participating in the competition felt their blood freeze just by looking at Fu Lingtian. Yi Qingtang took a look as well. Fu Lingtian had a striking appearance, and it was no wonder Qinglin sect valued him this much. The Blood Moon sect elder followed Yi Qingtang's gaze and looked over as well, but this caused his brows to furrow unconsciously. This fellow is a little strange. Why? Yi Qingtang looked over. She initially thought that the Blood Moon sect elder wanted to take over Fu Lingxian's body after seeing that he had good endowments, but when she looked at the odd expression on the Blood Moon sect elder's face, she faintly sensed that something was off. Chapter 415, Oddity 3. The Blood Moon sect elder was not in a hurry to reply. He tapped his chin with a frown as he repeatedly scanned Fu Lingxian's body with sharp eyes, seeming to be searching for something. A moment later, shock filled the Blood Moon sect elder's eyes, and he immediately spoke softly. Why does this fellow have the aura of my Blood Moon sect? Aura of the Blood Moon sect? What do you mean by that? Yi Qingtang asked. The Blood Moon sect elder scanned the surroundings. After ensuring that other disciples were a distance away from them and would not be able to hear him, he replied in a hushed voice. The cultivation technique of the Blood Moon sect has a distinctive color of its own that other powers would not be able to imitate. Anyone who cultivated my sect's cultivation technique would faintly exude an aura of the evil spirit. Others may not be able to see this evil aura, and only we Blood Moon sect people would be able to tell. I see that this Fu Lingtian is faintly exuding a bit of the air of an evil spirit. Why wouldn't it be strange? The Blood Moon sect elder thought it was weird. Qinglin's sect was a righteous sect, and the cultivation techniques were mostly based on the vital energy. It was utterly impossible for a disciple to possess an aura of the evil spirit, which was produced from evil cultivation techniques. There was doubt in Yi Qingtang's eyes. She had never cultivated the Blood Moon sect's evil cultivation techniques and naturally could not see the so-called aura of the evil spirit. However, wasn't it up to what the Blood Moon sect elder said as to whether this thing really existed? What is this expression that you're looking at me with? I did not lie to you. I just find it odd myself. The Blood Moon sect elder huffed, displeased to be stared by Yi Qingtang in suspicion. You have such a notorious record. Who can you blame? Yi Qingtang raised a brow. The Blood Moon sect elder was speechless by her words but truly felt that he was maligned this time. Darn girl, I'm really not lying to you this time. Who knows? Maybe this supposed Fu Lingtian was also seized by a resurrected member of my sect. If you don't believe me, I can just find a chance to test him later, and we will know, the Blood Moon sect elder uttered seriously. The Blood Moon sect had been annihilated for a long time, and their cultivation techniques were long lost along with the annihilation of the sect. Not mentioning the disciples of righteous sects, even other forces would absolutely not be able to understand the cultivation techniques of their sect. The Blood Moon sect elder had a greedy thought. If Fu Lingtian was really seized by a member of the Blood Moon sect, he would have found a partner. Moreover, he heard that Fu Lingxian's skills were powerful, and should they really be from the Blood Moon sect, he could use Fu Lingtian to get rid of Yi Qingtang. However, the Blood Moon sect elder did not dare to let Yi Qingtang see through this thought of his. Yi Qingtang looked at the Blood Moon sect elder doubtfully and sensed that there was something fishy about what this old fellow was thinking of. However, she did not say anything and kept this curiosity inside her. If Fu Lingtian was related to the Blood Moon sect, then the three-sect competition this time would probably not be as simple as expected. After all, the Blood Moon sect had many cultivation techniques using one's internal strength. While Yi Qingtang had the confidence to make herself conspicuous in this competition based on her skills, she would have to be more careful if the opponent was a person seized by a member of the Blood Moon sect. You better be obedient this time or else, Yi Qingtang chuckled as she casually clenched her knuckles, which set off a cracking sound. The back of the Blood Moon sect elder turned cold, though he had a sincere expression on his face. Don't worry. I will definitely be obedient this time. After hearing what the Blood Moon sect elder said, she did not say anything else and decided to find a chance to spy on Fu Lingtian before the competition. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.